City of STEM.
Hi, welcome to the City of STEM Educator Day. I'm Anthony Kwan from the Los Angeles County Office of Education, where I serve as STEM coordinator, supporting science, math, computer science, STEAM initiatives, as well as a handful of student events such as the LA County Science and Engineering Fair, Science Olympiad, Engaging Girls in STEM, Los Angeles Environmental Education Fair, and the LA County Math Field Day competition. Links to all of these events and activities will be added to the live chat. Hopefully you've been able to join us for at least one of our previous City to STEM events. Each year, we hold an in-person huge science festival at the Columbia Memorial Space Center here in the city of Downey. Our last in-person event was in 2019, where 10,000 people watched Bill Nye live on stage. In 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic took hold, we held off on the in-person event and went virtual with the first ever virtual science festival last October. We're happy to say that we returned for a full month of virtual STEM fun with a kickoff last month on March 23rd with our second virtual science festival featuring over 21 hours of streaming STEM programs from many of our partners. We followed that up last week with our first ever STEM Career Day, and viewers heard all about different STEM careers that students may be interested in pursuing. Today, we're dedicating this event to all the amazing and dedicated STEM educators out there, both in a formal classroom and informal settings, where some of our fantastic partners will show you new techniques and activity ideas to engage your students in different STEM disciplines. The City of STEM has 2 more events coming up this month. Next Thursday, we have a virtual Earth Day celebration filled with fun and engaging programs to celebrate our home planet, Earth. It's the only one we have, so we have to take care of it. Lastly, on April 29th, we're hosting an Innovation in LA event where several creative and innovative organizations from around LA show off how they're advancing STEM right here in our own backyards. Both of these upcoming events will stream live at 3:30 p.m. right here on the City of STEM YouTube page. So if you haven't already, subscribe to us by clicking the button below me and tune in. Did you know that LA County is home to 33% of the entire population of students in the state of California? Throughout today's programming, I'll share these tidbits of information, as well as some of the things I'm up to for the students and teachers of Los Angeles County. We have a great lineup of programming for you, the educators aimed at assisting you in your work as you engage students at all levels in STEM activities. Don't forget to subscribe to us by clicking the subscription button below and follow City of STEM on social media at City of STEM on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. First up today is the reDiscover Center. With over 17 years of experience with creative, reused materials and a wide variety of tools, they will guide you in the whats, whys, and hows of guiding students in setting up and using a home makerspace. reDiscover.
City of STEM.
Hi, my name is Barb Noren. I'm from reDiscover Center, which is a kids makerspace and creative reuse center. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about home-based makerspaces for distance learning. Here we go. Now, a lot of you have surely been doing a lot of distance learning at this point already, but and you've gotten used to a lot of it. But I want to tell you a little bit about what we do at reDiscover Center and how our expertise can help out you with your projects and helping to engage your students. So we are a nonprofit. Our mission is to develop children's creativity through hands-on making with sustainable materials. We've been doing creative reuse since 2003 in art projects, and we began expanding into STEAM maker education in around 2010. So we serve the community in our facility at pop-up locations. We work with schools, libraries, museums, community centers, parks, departments. We've got classes, camps, field trips, workshops, drop-in making hours. And during the pandemic, we've expanded our online offerings for both for individuals and for schools. So we have a lot of virtual field trips and classes. And we've also curated a toolkit of the most useful, home-friendly, kid-friendly tools and materials that kids are able to use on their own at home without somebody immediately directly helping them. So let's talk about some home makerspaces here. So what we'll do is we'll talk about what they are, just kind of go over them a little bit, why you'd want to have them for your students, what kind of materials and tools that you might want to use, and safety for them, setup tips for being able to use those in most efficiently as you can, and then a few skills to kind of get you going. So home makerspace, it combines a functional workspace. It has useful tools and accessible materials. And this is part of the important thing, is that we want them to be not just recyclable and helping the planet, but to be accessible so that anybody is able to. We want to lower the bar to engagement for this. It lets them interact, and they show their way, they're learning in a different kind of way, which is exciting for them. It grows students' making literacy. It encourages environmental awareness. It cultivates resourcefulness, because making use of what you have around you is a really helpful task that a lot of people do, and it's important to expand on that. You can express ideas with physical objects, especially ideas that are not easily explained in the spoken word. You can fix things that are broken. You can make what you need. Engagement for hands-on activities, as we've found, as you, I'm sure, have found, is very high. So, things that you want to have to make best use of it. Some of the materials that we've found to be most useful include things like corrugated cardboard. So this is like delivery boxes. It's the kind of thing that has this corrugation, these wavy lines in it. This is useful, a little bit harder to cut with scissors, but I'll show you how we do that in a little bit. But this is good for stronger type things, not as much for bending. Paperboard, which is some items like cereal boxes, like this is a tissue box. These are good. Paper towel rolls, toilet paper rolls, cartons, lots and lots of different food packaging materials are use paperboard. This is good because it's much more easily cut with scissors, and it can easily bend. It tends to be a little bit more often around the house. So this is also an extremely useful material to create things, whether they be prototypes or finished projects that you're going to kind of add more detail to. Plastic containers, like yogurt cups, like, I'm not 100% certain what this was from. Some kind of packaging. I've got, a raspberry bin. There's all kinds of caps and lids and bottle caps and such like that that you can use. Newspapers, magazines, junk mail, all very useful, and also a really good way of adding color to something without using paint or markers, is taking, some of the ads that go to your mailbox, cutting these out, gluing or taping them onto your project is a good way to do both collaging and just adding color. Wire, like paper clips and twist ties, super useful, especially for other ways of attaching things. Disposable bags can be used in a wide variety of ways, including cutting them up. Disposable utensils, And then just kind of like anything, as soon as you start opening your mind to different kinds of things that you can do and looking at things in new ways, you can come up with all kinds of ways of doing stuff like this little tennis ball person with button eyes. I honestly, some kind of fur stuff and yeah. And this is a great person, great way to talk. Hello. And then, of course, this goes to, there are so many things. In fact, like old clothing, old T-shirts can be created, turned into new things. You can cut it into they call it like T-shirt yarn, and you can use that as a material to crochet with, or just use as a string. Wide variety of things that you can use. Some of our favorite tools, I'll talk through these really quickly, and then I'll show you some of them. The tinkering toolkit that we have put together, which currently looks something like this, just kind of has some of our favorite tools, the ones that we have found to be most useful over the years. Because at reDiscover Center, we often use things like drills and saws and chop saws. And this is with kids, with elementary school kids. So we have a lot of experience at using tools, at having safe protocols for how to use these tools in an effective and, safe manner. And it's worked really well. So we have a lot of experience with this. Some of the things that we have is we have a canary cutter. This is really good for cutting corrugated cardboard. Sometimes this is going to be more useful than scissors. Sometimes scissors are going to be more useful. For instance, if you're cutting paperboard, a canary cutter will be overkill. If you are cutting paperboard, scissors are going to be great. If you're trying to cut through a piece of corrugated cardboard, canary cutter is going to do well. You're trying to cut small details in corrugated cardboard, scissors are going to do better. Scissors are super useful, obviously, all types. But another one that we especially like are these shears, these cardboard shears. Sometimes you hear them called trauma shears or cardboard scissors or something like that. They're at an offset angle, and this makes it easier to cut through cardboard because your hand and the scissors don't get stuck in there. One of the things that's really nice about the canary cutters, as I was saying, is that we have tried lots of things. There are, box cutters, utility knives. Those tend to be a lot more dangerous. And X-Acto knives also are dangerous. This is sharp on both sides, but tends to be a lot easier to control, and it's easier to set up standard methods of use. And having good safety protocols for the tools is really, really important for making sure that the kids are able to use them safely and efficiently. And that's one of the reasons that we love this tool so much. We use screwdrivers often, like very small ones, not big things, both for, screws, but also for punching holes in something like a piece of cardboard. Because if you want to try to punch a hole, better than stabbing, which is definitely not a safe thing to do, is using a screwdriver to punch a couple holes. Like that. Then that opening, and I am holding this up, which is not how I would recommend the kids doing it, but this is just so it's easier for you to see. Now I've got this canary cutter in here, and now I can cut a lot more safely. We have a couple other things that we like, because scissors are great for cutting through thin materials. Canary cutter is great for cutting through corrugated cardboard. For things that are a little bit heavier, like wire, like sticks, we have things like wire cutters or snips. This is going to be much more useful. It's not going to, if you're trying to cut through a popsicle stick, it's not going to damage your scissors. These are made for that. They're very useful. Same with pliers. A lot of the time, pliers, the ones that we have, also have cutters in the middle and little grabbies. Sometimes they have different kinds of, There are a lot of kinds of pliers, but ours also have cutters involved in them too. Then also for cutting, sometimes the fold and tear is what it's an extremely useful tool, knowledge skill to have, because regardless of what tools you have, you're probably not going to have them on you at all times. So it's useful to be able to know how to cut some paper just by folding it and unfolding it and folding it and refolding it, and sometimes like wetting that crease until you can tear it. Lots of useful ways of cutting. For attaching things that we like, one of the most common ones that we use hot glue. And this is a thing that is, I'm doing on time, yeah. Can be dangerous if you are not being careful with it. So I'll talk about safety in just a second here. But it's very useful in certain kinds of situations. So it dries quickly and it can provide material support in a way that school glue, hang on, I have to get out my school glue from its home. This takes longer to dry, but it can do better at some sorts of materials. It's really good for collaging, obviously. Glue sticks, great for paper, not so great for much else, but is extremely useful if you're attaching paper type things. And then, of course, you have tape. You might have Scotch tape, you might have masking tape, lots of different types, and all of these attaching methods are useful in different situations, depending on how quickly you need it to dry, whether you need a substantial amount of extra material, if you need like a flap of tape. These are important things to consider. And then, because sometimes you don't have a lot of those things on hand, there are other kinds of mechanical attachments, whether it be punching a hole and using like a twist tie to tie something together, or using something like brass fasteners, like these little guys, brads. These are another useful thing to do. You can make tabs out of cardboard or paper. You can do slot construction, which I'll show you in a second here. You can use string. There are a whole lot of different things, and a lot of things that can be found around the house, because you can find strings in a lot of places. I mean, I often will find them coming off of a shirt. It's like, okay, that piece that's unraveling, I will cut that. I can save this. I can use this. So, as I mentioned, safety, very important. In our tinkering toolkit, there are a couple of safety tools, equipment pieces that we include that are extremely, extremely useful. Now, I mentioned, but the most important one, as I have here on my slides, is the brain. So, most important way, best way to make sure that people are staying safe with these is thinking ahead. If you think ahead and you encourage the students to think ahead to what might happen if it slips, when it slips, because it'll slip at some point. You think you're going to have control over it, but these things go sometimes. If you think ahead about where it's going to slip to, then you can make sure that your hand is not in the way. For a lot of these tools, especially if they're farther, if we're doing this in distance, gloves are going to be very useful, and I should say gloves that fit the kids well. This is something that we've experimented a lot with. If they don't fit, they won't wear them. So this is true for gloves and for goggles. So good kid-sized gloves, good kid-sized goggles, which we have dug out ones and tested them on hundreds, thousands of kids, and found out ones that work really, really well. And that's what we have and what we used. So gloves we use both for hot glue, because that helps protect them. And sometimes we'll also use them with the canary cutter, because it just gives like a little bit of an extra barrier. You want to establish using the safety equipment right at the beginning and enforce it throughout. Consistency is really important in that way. Another thing, because we need to be engaging their brains in learning, obviously, and also in being intentional and conscious of their tool use, is to discuss common mistakes. For instance, with a canary cutter, I can say, all right, I'm going to cut my cardboard. And I say this, and I'll usually show this, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to cut. And they say, stop, stop, stop. You're going to cut your finger off. And it's like, okay. Oh, okay. So I need to be careful and pay attention to where I am cutting and where my fingers are. So things like that, making sure their hands are not in the way or they're going to get cut, things like that. Thinking about common mistakes, presenting them to them so that they are aware of things that they might want to keep an eye on. And then we also want to talk about what to do if something does go wrong. Like, for instance, if you happen to get hot glue on your skin, if, for instance, if you have forgotten to put on your gloves, or if it gets on your arm or something, what do you do? I usually present this to the students and say, hey, what are you going to do if this happens? Give me answers. And sometimes I'll get, tell an adult, run it under cold water, scream. And it's like, no. First thing to do is take the burning thing off your skin. Fast as you can, rub it, get it off your hands, quick as you can. Sometimes you do that and it stops and you can just keep on going. And if it doesn't, then go run it under cold water. If that still hurts after a minute, then maybe figure out Band-Aid situation. So talking about this in advance means that in that precise moment of there is glue on my skin, I need to know what to do with this. They'll be like, oh, I remember this is the thing that I need to do, and take it off. Or if you are telling them at the moment, it helps jog their memory on how to do that. So setting up your space. So some particular, this is a long slide, couple important things for the ideal home makerspace, because there's never an actual home, perfect home makerspace. But we can try. Here's some things to try for. If you are using any kind of powered things like a hot glue gun, it's important to think about it in advance, or it's helpful to think about it in advance and say, okay, I need to be near a power outlet. Because trying to move things in the middle of it gets a little bit tricky. A work surface is very useful. Not just, a bed. This can also be a floor if you need to, just like having a small piece of floor. Maybe it is a cardboard box. Great. Have a cardboard box that can be their desk. Yes. And covering it, you want to protect it with something like, professionals tend to use things like cutting mats, maybe a silicone kitchen mat. Silicone tends to have hot glue peel up really easily. Those are totally great. They're also totally not necessary. A piece of cardboard over a surface is a really useful surface thing to protect your surface, to cover it. Piece of cardboard. That's great. And you can draw on it then too. It's kind of awesome. You want to have your flexible tools and materials. This is part of the reason that we chose the tools, and I suggested the tools that I have, is because they are useful in a whole lot of different situations. But you need your scissors, writing and coloring implements. If you can, getting into more advanced tools is useful. And recycled materials, and this is an important thing, is making sure that they're able to collect the materials when they are available. If you're not thinking about it in advance, or if you're not preparing and saying, hey, we need to look for boxes. Perhaps if a delivery comes in, that box might very quickly get broken down and put out in the recycling, or put out in the trash, and gotten rid of really quickly. Sometimes people don't have these things. Sometimes they need to reach out and talk to somebody else to see if they can access it. If you need to talk to a neighbor looking for boxes, or from the market. Because a lot of these places have these things that they're just getting rid of, and they will happily give it to you or to a student to help them with their learning and with their creative and passions. A special spot for various tools is important, especially dangerous tools, especially the hot glue gun. This is one of the most important things that I can tell you, is having a spot for a glue gun, like a jar, like this is a flower pot, like a tin can, like this is an applesauce jar, something like that. so that it has its home. This will prevent a whole lot of hot glue burns, because if you take a tool like this that's really hot, put it down flat on the table next to you, and you reach your arm out, you're not actually using it. You're not even thinking about it. It is out of your sight. You're not actually looking. You're not noticing that it's there. You reach by, you can easily burn yourself. If, when you're teaching it and when they're setting this up, you say, okay, this is my glue gun's home. I'm going to take this. I'm going to squirt the glue, put it in its home, which I like to have kind of at the back of the workspace, and then put your things together. That way you don't have to worry about that glue gun sitting there and accidentally burning somebody when they're not paying attention. Organization, super, super important, because if you have a mess of things, real hard to do stuff. Great. So creating some kind of storage situation. This is an oatmeal box with paper towel rolls that I cut and folded and taped at the bottom. So I have these little containers here that I can store different kinds of things, different materials in. You can, as I was, right. So yes, having various items and objects to store things in is really useful. And it's also very important, it's ideal to have the kids be making these things themselves, coming up with their own solutions, because if they are taking charge of it, then they're going to know what needs to be done. They're going to know what they want to do with it. They'll be more engaged, they'll be more interested in it, and they'll take better care of it. And then just one very last thing, really quickly, because there's no way I would ever have time to actually show you all of these. Legos click together really nicely and easily. They're made to go together. These kinds of things are not made to go together. So having techniques to be able to attach things together are really useful. These are a few skills, just really fast. If you want to know more about these, I would suggest looking them up. L braces, flanges, gussets, reinforced layers, like having different layers, sistering, having a piece that attaches two pieces together, exploring the flutes, the corrugation inside corrugated cardboard, doing scoring and being able to do curves with corrugated cardboard. Like I mentioned, slot construction, which doesn't need any kind of glue or tape or anything. And then you can do layers and add layers together to create three-dimensional shapes. Cool. And there was one question. How have you addressed equity during the pandemic and kids not necessarily having access to any maker materials at home? Have you been able to send out materials or tools? We have a lot of our tinkering toolkits. We've gotten some grants so that we can send them out to places. We've also worked a lot with different classes and different schools where they have limited things that are available at home. There are a lot of alternatives that you can do. For instance, if you were trying to do something with corrugated cardboard and a canary cutter, instead using paperboard and scissors can be another way of doing that. And like I mentioned, even with paper, folding and tearing is also a useful thing. So there are a lot of different methods of attachment and cutting that use different levels of tools. So you can often modify different activities that you're doing based on what is available. Great. So let me, I'll just show you, I've got just a couple seconds left, a couple things that I've made. This is a tree made from a paper towel roll and some leaves that are made from mailers. Let's see, what else do I have? A macaroni and cheese box that became a storage container that has little dividers in it. And then my rabbit ears that use straws, and I can bend them. So thank you for watching. You can visit rediscovercenter.org/pedagogy for more information, and reach out if you have some things that you want to talk about, or if we can help you out in any way.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Pop Culture Arts curriculum, and today I'll be teaching you guys how to create your very own miniature Wally.
I'm Connor, the co-founder of Cardboard Superheroes, which is a nonprofit that promotes the arts in youth. Please make sure to give us a follow on our Instagram and check out our website.
Cardboard Superheroes has been so lucky to partner with the Comic-Con Museum to bring you this curriculum, and so make sure to give them a follow as well.
For any educators that are watching and would like to receive the free teacher's guide with the framework overview, learning objectives, and much more, please contact us at education@cardboardsuperheroes.com.
Without further ado, let's get started.
Thanks, Barb and reDiscover Center. The Makerspace movement has been a long-standing initiative for schools and districts across the nation for a few decades. It's great to have such expertise in our own county, so don't be afraid to reach out for more information or to create a long-standing partnership. I'd also like to thank our sponsors today. Our lead sponsors today is Amgen, an international leader in biotech headquartered right here in Southern California. We also couldn't pull off our events without the support of our other sponsors, Northrop Grumman, the Eli and Edith Broad Foundation, the Annenberg Foundation, SoCal Edison, Aerojet Rocketdyne, Hitachi, DeVry University, the Science Festival Alliance, the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, and the City of Downey. We'd like to send a special shout out to Financial Partners Credit Union, who is sponsoring all of our Women in STEM programming this month in partnership with Engaging Girls in STEM, a program of the LA County Office of Education. So, what does 33% of the student population equate to in numbers of students? That's roughly 1.9 million TK through 12th grade students. Again, all here in LA County. If you need an introduction to other areas outside of LA County, you can also contact me. I have a huge network of colleagues and associates throughout the county and beyond. Next spring, be sure to drop by the LA County Science and Engineering Fair's open house, where you can see not only the hundreds of science projects by students, but also our own interactive exhibit space where teachers, families, and students can explore an assortment of hands-on experiences to inspire the next generation of STEM enthusiasts. Speaking of assortments, next up is Cardboard Superheroes, where we are excited to hear about a new Cardboard Superheroes and Comic-Con Museum pop culture STEM curriculum. Up, and away!
City of STEM.
Hello everyone, I'm Connor,
And I'm Bauer.
and we're the founders of Cardboard Superheroes.
Today, we're going to be introducing the new pop culture STEAM curriculum that my brother and I just launched. But before we do that, we're going to go into detail about what Cardboard Superheroes is.
So for the past 7 years, my brother and I have been building these life-size cardboard models, as you can see behind us. We also teach engaging courses to students to teach them things like creativity, the arts, and STEAM.
If you have any questions, please feel free to type it in the chat and we'll answer it at the end in Q&A. So Cardboard Superheroes partnered with the Comic-Con Museum to present to you the pop culture STEAM curriculum for teachers and students.
So this is our presentation right here. Our mission is to promote and inspire creativity through pop culture arts for all ages. And specifically in this presentation, we'll be sharing how students can get involved through our pop culture STEAM.
So why did we create the pop culture STEAM curriculum? Well, one, it provides an alternative way of learning during the COVID-19 pandemic. It also gives students an engaging art experience by using their favorite pop culture art while also implementing STEAM education so they can learn science, technology, engineering, and math, or art and math. And it's also accessible to everyone because it's online, it's free, and it uses friendly at-home materials. So this is an overview of what we're going to be doing today. So you guys already saw the teaser video, but now we're going to show you the introduction video, which goes a little bit more in depth on the STEAM curriculum. Then we're going to show you how exactly you can receive the pop culture STEAM curriculum resources. And then we're going to go through a detailed explanation of those resources. So here's the pop culture STEAM curriculum introduction video.
What's up, everyone? It's Connor and Bauer from Cardboard Superheroes.
Welcome to the Pop Culture STEAM curriculum course in partnership with the Comic-Con Museum.
In this video, we'll be introducing a new project for students and teachers.
This will be aligned with the NGSS or Next Generation Science Standards.
For any teachers that are watching and would like to receive the free teacher's guide with the lesson plan and grading rubric, as well as student worksheets, please fill out the short Google Forms in the description below.
In this course, you will be immersed in the arts and engineering to create these 10 mini models right here.
Each student will be receiving a template to build these models right here, which also includes a supplies list, safety tips, and reference images.
Please remember to read through the safety tips before starting on your build.
Whether you're using the worksheet or not, the purpose of this course is to try something new and have fun.
Also, if you want to learn more about me and my brother, go check out our Comic-Con panel video.
With all that said,
See ya!
So now we're going to be sharing how you can receive the pop culture STEAM curriculum resources. So there are two ways you can receive them. One is by going to the Comic-Con Museum website, and the other way is you can go through our website, www.cardboardsuperheroes.com. And so the first thing you want to do is click on the top bar right here, and it's called Education. You want to click on that.
So once you clicked on the Education tab, you're going to click on the orange STEAM curriculum button.
Next, you'll be directed to the STEAM curriculum page, and you'll have access to all the resource or all the instruction videos and templates. If you scroll down, you'll be able to see all of them. However, if teachers who would like to receive the teacher resources, such as the worksheets, rubrics, lesson guides, presentations, and more, you can click on the Google Forms link or Google Forms button right there.
So of course, once you click on the Google Form button, you're just going to fill the Google Form out and make sure to click Submit. We'll be sending you the resources within the next day. And if you don't see anything within 24 hours, make sure to check your spam. So once you guys receive the email and you click on the link, it should take you to a page that looks like this. You're going to see 4 folders in there, which I labeled A, B, C, and D, as well as 3 documents, 1, 2, and 3. So documents 1, 2, and 3 is just like a welcome intro packet that just basically introduces, what the STEAM curriculum is. And packets 1 and 2 are more specifically for the teachers, as it goes much more into detail about, what the STEAM curriculum is and what your students should be expecting and what the teacher should be expecting. And document number 3 is just the safety tips and supplies list for your students.
So the 4 folders, which are labeled A, B, C, and D, these are where all your resources are going to be. And so folder A is for elementary school, and folder B is for middle school. And these 4 folders are going to have like the worksheets, the lesson guides, the rubrics, the presentations. And folder C will have all the templates. And finally, folder D will have all the video links. And these will direct you to the Comic-Con Museum YouTube channel.
So this curriculum is much more than just, students building models by following instruction videos and templates. They're going to have to think big and outside of the box. They're going to have to think like their favorite, like movie creators, designers, and engineers, so that they can really learn the design process very well. They're going to have to, brainstorm ideas. They're going to have to build prototypes. They're going to have to do research, and they're also finally going to have to build the final model.
So these are examples of the 10 models that students can build. And we took a survey among a lot of kids and students, and we decided on these 10 models that are the most engaging for them. So they range from like the Marvel universe, the DC universe, Nickelodeon, and also Minecraft characters.
So like my brother said before, these are the 10 models that will be part of the STEAM curriculum. And what's cool about this curriculum is it's very flexible. Teachers who want to adopt this curriculum, they don't need to use all 10 models and teach them all to their students. They can instead just choose like 1 or 2 to teach throughout the year. But we really do encourage teachers to have their students build all 10. That way, your students can really learn the design process very well in the engineering process. And so if you're a teacher out there and you do decide to have your students build all 10 of the models, what's cool is you can, at the very end of them building all 10 models, you can have them build an 11th model, which is essentially they're creating their own. They're going to find the model out there, and of course, they're going to follow the design process. They're going to have to, find their favorite model, they'll have to create a template, research ideas, find the problems, and see how to, maneuver around them. And this just really goes to show how well they learned the design process over the past, like 10 weeks they've been doing this.
So here is the example of the engineering design process that my brother described. And we also were inspired by NASA to design this curriculum. So right now our curriculum, we've launched the curriculum 1 month ago, and it's had a huge outreach, and we've been in over 6 schools in over 6 states and also 4 countries. And so right here you can see some of the schools that are using them, and we have countries in we have India, Norway, and also in Canada.
And so, of course, one reason we wanted to show you guys this map is, the amazing outreach that we've had in the past month this has been launched. But another reason that we wanted to show you this is if you're a teacher out there that's using this and, another teacher in your district or in your school hears about this, I know it's like so much easier for you to just send them the Google Drive link. But we really do ask if it's possible that instead you could direct them to our website or send them the Google Forms link. That way, my brother and I can do things like this and create this map just to see like how many teachers out there and how many schools are using this curriculum, and where out there, like in the US or all around the globe, schools are using this curriculum.
So thank you for listening, and now we will wrap up our session with Q&A. So you can type in your questions in the chat if there are any, but right now my brother and I will just share a little bit more about what we do and about cardboard superheroes. So we've been building, like I said, models for around 7 years now. And I started off in around the 4th grade when I built my very first model, R2-D2. And you can kind of see R2-D2 right over there. And so R2-D2 was kind of like the starting ground for building all my other models that I had. And so after R2-D2, I then built Iron Man. He's not here right now. We're repairing him because we do make mistakes along the way. And so that just goes to show that in art, you can make mistakes. And especially in this STEAM curriculum, students, of course, will make mistakes. And our lessons will guide them to overcome the mistakes and learn from them.
Yeah, and so I guess my first model, well, it wasn't actually a full-scale model, but actually right next to my brother, you can see kind of like half of a Stormbreaker over there. And so that was the first model that I built. And just like my brother said, along the way we make mistakes, but we learn from each other. And that kind of shows like when you're doing the STEAM curriculum, also teamwork is involved. This doesn't just have to be like a one-person project. You can team up, share ideas with each other, see how to maneuver around the problems that you're going to face. And you probably will face, because me and my brother, even though we're able to build these, we still make a ton of mistakes. And so, there's just a lot of, life skills that you learn from this curriculum, which we think is great.
And so right now we'll show you some examples of the model up close. So we showed you a picture of all of them, but here's just kind of like the scale. And so students will be building these. We have like Pac-Man right here. Here's an example of Thor's hammer that they can also build. And so these are some things that they'll be learning math skills, like scaling things up. And so here is like an example of Thor's hammer that they learn to build out like the templates and watching the tutorial videos.
Yeah, and then we also have models from people like favorite games, like this one is from Fortnite. It's the Fortnite chess. And so we just implemented a lot of things that, we did a survey, like my brother said in the presentation, and we found what models that people love the best.
So this one's actually one of the most popular models that we have, and it's the Captain America shield. And this one teaches great designs, and one thing specifically it teaches is how to curve cardboard. And this is a very hard thing to design, and especially as an engineer, architect, curving solid and straight pieces are very hard. And so this will teach students how to do that. And you can kind of see, once you learn that basic step, a lot of these models actually have detailed curves in it. For example, like C-3PO, his head is all these curves and complex shapes. And so this just shows how students will be able to progress over time and be able to build more models. We also have Wall-E right there.
Yeah, so this is the Wall-E up close. And so this is another one that you can build. I chose this one. This actually wasn't in the poll, but I chose this one because I love this movie. It's one of my favorite Pixar movies growing up, and I actually have a full-scale model of him right here. And so I thought this was like a great model to choose. And of course, like my brother said, it does involve a lot of curves, as you can tell, the wheels, as well as the hands and also the head.
All right, so we have some questions coming in. And one of the questions is, what tools do you need to build the model? So the great thing about this course is that most of the tools are at home for students. So we wanted to use basic materials such as like cardboard. And then in terms of tools, students will be using like scissors, and also
they can just use like a hot glue gun, just like this one. And what's great is, you know, the cardboard that you're going to use for this project to build, for example, this Captain America shield, you can just use like your old like discarded Amazon boxes or any shipments you get. So if you actually see, like, this was built out of an old Amazon box, and you can kind of see like the little black tags that were on. And so, you know, you can recycle some of the materials you have at home.
So the reason why we chose cardboard is because it's stronger than paper, but it's also, you can easily manipulate it and create these complex shapes and designs like this. And it's also recyclable, and there's a lot of cardboard boxes you can get anywhere. It's easy to receive, and you can also donate cardboard boxes to people. So here is an example of like my brother shared, is like we use Amazon boxes to design these and create these. So you can partly see some of the Amazon box design on them as well. So one thing teachers should be aware of is that in order to complete the NGSS standards, students only need to build one model, and that will teach them the whole worksheets, the whole project that we've created. And another really cool thing, and these are some examples of past students who've created the Batman Frisbee, which is actually the easiest and the best beginning model that can lead them up to more complex models. And so people have designed them and use extra creativity to create this right here.
And so after you build a model, you know, we love to keep it in cardboard form because, I don't know, personally, I just like that look, but other people, you know, like I said, think outside the box and want to go above and beyond and design things like that. And in the STEAM curriculum, some of the, you know, like math concepts that you'll be learning, it ranges from, you know, like elementary school math to middle school. You'll be learning things from just like basic arithmetic all the way to like learning how to do like ratios and fractions and using protractors and things like that.
And so we got another question. What's the biggest model you've ever made? So this is actually a great question because my favorite model is the biggest, and you can kind of see him right over there. And that is the Hulkbuster. And he's actually standing around 8 feet tall right now.
And that one took us over a year to build. Yeah, we really wanted to make him taller because I think in the movie he's like 10 feet tall or something like that. But I'm not sure if you can see, but our ceiling is 8 feet tall, and so that's the height that we can make him. But yeah, that's definitely our favorite model, and that's the biggest one.
So this model right here, we actually use different pieces that we learned from all the other individual models. For example, like C-3PO's head had a lot of curves. So we got to implement that into Hulkbuster. And so we used different parts that we learned and created Hulkbuster. And so that's something that actually translates towards the STEAM curriculum course. And students can build individual models and collect all these new skills for engineering and math. And then at the end, we give the option of students creating their own model so they can finally challenge themselves and build their own thing from their own imagination or from their favorite movie. Okay.
And so like my brother said, like what's great about this is when we were creating the models, and the way we did it is we had all the models lined up from easiest to hardest. And so, you know, you start off with the easiest model and you learn very basic concept, and on your journey to building all 10 models, it gradually gets more difficult and more difficult. And, you know, that's like you take baby steps. Like in life, you don't jump 10 steps forward. Like for us to build Hulkbuster, like the first thing like my brother started off with was R2-D2, which was very simple. And the first thing I started off with was the Stormbreaker, which is just a very small cardboard model that I built. And so, you know, like as time goes on, you can slowly build up your skills until maybe one day you'll be able to build your own Hulkbuster.
Okay, so we have another question, and this is, what is the time frame from start to finish of a project? So in terms of the mini models, they all range. But for example, right here, the Batman Frisbee will take maybe around, I'd say,
30 to 45 minutes.
30 to 45 minutes, or it could take up to an hour. So Some models are really short. Other models, however,
like the Fortnite chess, this is one of the most difficult. This might take up to like an hour and a half to build, or 2 hours. But that's for the mini models. And then if you're asking for the larger models, it totally depends. Like the mini ones that you see there, which are Baby Groot and Baby Yoda, those took us maybe like 4 months on average to build. But the larger models, like maybe like Black Manta or C3PO, take us like 8 months to build. And then, like we said before, Hulkbuster took us like a year and maybe
over
3
a year,
months. Yeah.
And also in terms of like completing all the worksheets and the project that we've implemented into also building the models, I'd say that would take, I would say like give a week for that. And it gives plenty enough to like go into detail on specific parts of the models and researching and engineering and all that, all like math and sciences as well.
And also what's great about this curriculum, this STEAM curriculum, we are teaching, of course, like as the name says, it's a STEAM curriculum. We're teaching science, technology, engineering, art, and math. But, other like life skills kind of get, like added in. You learn about like perseverance, even though like some of these models, while we're building them, we have to completely redo parts of it. And so, you should just never give up. And if you really love something, then you'll just work to it till the end.
And actually some of the models on the shelf are our first prototypes and our beginning models that we messed up on, and we slowly advanced and finally created our final products. And so in the course, students will actually be able to build prototypes and learn other skills in order to improve and finally expand upon their creativity and be able to design their own models or complete our models. Let's see if there's any more questions.
So I guess a lot of people ask, like, what are the NGSS standards, which are what the standards that the STEAM curriculum line up to. So NGSS stands for Next Generation Science Standards, which is actually the standards that the entire U.S. country has to follow.
Or most states in the U.S.
Yeah, most states in the U.S. have to follow. And so we lined it up to these that way while students are learning, while students are having fun building these like little mini models, they're also learning, very useful skills that they need to learn in school to, later help them on in life.
So specifically, we implemented the engineering standards, and we thought that was a perfect way to have students learn research skills in science, technology as well, engineering, arts, and mathematics. So if there are no more questions, I think that will be all for today. And thank you so much for having us. Thank you, City of STEM. And we hope you enjoyed listening to our presentation. And we hope you want to access these teachers' resources. And again, just to recap, you can check them out on our website, which is at cardboardsuperheroes.com. Thank you.
Want to learn about a CAD program and how you can use it to teach math? We're Joan Horvath and Rich Cameron of NonScriptum LLC, and we'll be running a session about the free program OpenSCAD and how to create 3D printable math and science models. We'll show you examples of geometry models created in OpenSCAD and give a quick demonstration of how you can get started with it. Join us on Thursday, April 15th during the City of STEM Professional Development Day and check it out.
Thanks, Cardboard Superheroes. Now I have ideas about room decor and potential Christmas gifts with all the Amazon boxes I've collected over the last year. I would love to invite all of our girls in LA County to go to our Engaging Girls in STEM website and meet our superheroes. our fabulous female STEM ambassadors. The link will be added into the YouTube chat box just to the right of me if you're watching on desktop, or just underneath if you're watching from your phone. We've got a couple more events with a day in the life of an ambassador, as well as our Play with an Ambassador program. Don't forget to follow the Engaging Girls in STEM on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Check out the Engaging Girls in STEM web link and register now. I'm excited to see the next program, especially with the tie-in to the computer science standards. The T, technology, in STEM often gets overlooked. So we're super excited to have Non-Scriptum showcasing their curriculum where students can play with math using computer-aided design, or CAD for you designers out there. Let's get printing!
City of STEM.
Okay, we're going live. You're live. All righty, so hello people out there in YouTube land. We're glad you're joining us today. I'm Joan Horvath of Non-Scriptum LLC. My partner Rich Cameron here. And what we're going to do today is talk to you a little bit about making 3D printable science projects. And a little bit about us first. We have we're a two-person company called Non-Scriptum, and hopefully someone on YouTube there can put that in the chat for us, the YouTube chat, so you can see it. We teach people how to use 3D printers, and we started this company in 2015 after, for a while, being part of a 3D printer company. And we realized that teachers really need some help in figuring out what to do with a 3D printer. And so we've created an assortment of various 3D printable models. We have a couple of books of 3D printed science projects that are available pretty much everywhere. And we'll show you some of the models from that. We'll show you a little bit about OpenSCAD. And so if you want to follow along, the free software we're going to talk about is at OpenSCAD, that's OpenSCAD.org. And you can download that and follow along, or you can check it out later. It has very good documentation. So basically, when you make a 3D print, if you're new to 3D printing, there's sort of three parts to the process. First, you have to make a CAD model, computer-aided design model. You have to somehow make a 3D printable model. You can't 3D print something from a photograph, unfortunately. So you have to make some kind of 3D printable model, and that's what we're going to talk about here today. Once you get that model, usually you also have to put it into some other kind of piece of software that will then take that model and slice it up into layers and commands for the printer and all that good stuff. So that's a second part that's a little more printer dependent. So the stuff we're going to talk about today is kind of printer agnostic and works anywhere. And the software is particularly good for making models that are basically, it can be described by some equations. And so if you want to do models of math to show your students or otherwise talk about mathematical things, then this is the software for you. So I thought we would start off with a few examples, and then we will segue into Rich doing a quick demo. And we have only 20 minutes here, and this is a lot to cover, so we will sort of skim the surface. But you're welcome to contact us later. We do professional development. And if any of your schools are interested in that, you can contact us at nonscriptum.com. Okay, so the kinds of things you can do in OpenSCAD are you can make pretty sophisticated models. This is only about a page of OpenSCAD, and I'll show it to you later. This is a camellia-ish. And the way this model was built up is that plants have some very simple models of growth. You can make some simplistic ones, I should say. And this one lays out biomass at the golden angle and understands a little bit about how plants attach their petals to a center and how they lay them out from the middle. And so you can get fairly realistic looking things, but you can also at the same time kind of be able to teach about that. And the same OpenSCAD model made this model and this one with just a couple of numbers
changed at the top. So you can make these models that are interesting and sophisticated, and that can let you go pretty hands-on, surprisingly hands-on, without a whole lot of programming background. We also have a curriculum for lesson plans for teachers that are visually impaired. The intent is that you can teach geometry with 3D printable models for people who are otherwise can't see. So, for instance, this is a model of the biggest circle that can be inscribed in a triangle. This is a model of the biggest triangle that can be inscribed in a circle. And you can put these together. The circles are the same size. So you can put these together and think about them. And there's some really interesting theorems you can derive from this as you vary the number of sides in the polygon you have on the outside and on the inside. So we do have an open source curriculum for teachers who are visually impaired. It's on our website at nonscriptum.com/geometry, and toward the end of the YouTube session, they'll put up some of those links for us. And we do have a book coming out to teach geometry hands-on, including with 3D prints. They'll be coming out from Make in the summer. You can also do some fairly sophisticated models. This is the model of a gravitational well, and what that is if I start out on the Earth and I want to climb up to the space between the Earth and the Moon, if you imagine this coming down to a point, that's about where I would have to climb up to, and how much energy I would have to expend to get up to this point between the Earth and the Moon. On the other hand, from the Moon, I only have to get this high. And so what this model does is it lets you put any pair of bodies together, and you give it their masses and how far apart they are and a few other things, and it'll make the surface for you. So if you want your students to be able to visualize how pairs of bodies in space interact, what their gravitational potential between them looks like, you can do fairly sophisticated things like that. We also have a couple of models that we enjoy to talk about probability. So if I have one 6-sided die, I have an even probability of throwing a 1 through a 6, right? Because I tossed the die, and so there's an even probability of getting a 1 through getting a 6. If I have 2, though, I have 2 dice, so there's no longer a way to get a 1. There's a whole bunch of ways to get 7. You can think about that, and a lot fewer ways to get all the way to 12. And 3 dice, 4 dice, 5 dice start to flatten out into a bell curve. And so this is a very tactile and intuitive way to think about, how does this change? And we have the model allows you to have different numbers of sides and different numbers of dice. So you can also have one 12-sided die, 2 6s, 3 4s, 4 3s, and 6 1s. And so your students can look at, how do these probabilities change? And you can talk about throwing dice and Dungeons and Dragons to teach probability. So we find these are very interesting to kids and very tactile, obviously. And so that's the sort of thing we do. So let me show you quickly what some of these look like. So I'm sharing my screen here, and hopefully that's working on YouTube and here. Alrighty, so this is what a OpenSCAD model looks like. This is a model of that flower I showed earlier. So OpenSCAD is code-based, which means that it's accessible for people who need to use a screen reader. It's, as far as we know, the only software that is not drag and drop, which is a minus in some communities and a very good thing in the visually impaired community for obvious reasons. What you can do in OpenSCAD is that you can set up a lot of numbers that you want to change for your model, and then you have what looks like C or Java type code that you then use to define how you put those shapes together. And so you do need to know a little bit of coding, but the way we've built our models, you don't have to touch the coding. You can just change some of the numbers. So for instance, I can go from 89 petals, which I have here, to 13, and I can redisplay this, which will take a minute because this is a fairly complicated model. And I now have a rosebud instead of a rosebud instead of a camellia. So you can change things like that and get dramatically different results. And so it's a way for you to not have to have figured out all this stuff, but for you to be able to talk to students about how these plants might do something and how they interact with their world and stuff like that. Let me show you a different one. Whoops. There it is. All right, this is the Earth-Moon system that I showed you earlier. And so we give it the mass of one of the planets and the mass of the other planet, in this case the moon. If we had a Earth and Moon system that was much more similar than this one and much lighter, each one being much lighter, we would see there are just these two small gravity wells, and it'd be relatively easy to get out of both of them if both of them were about the size of the Earth, mass-wise, and you'd have very different surface between them. So this is a way to experiment and to visualize things that aren't necessarily all that easy to visualize. So if you want to build a three-dimensional model of something and have your students understand it, either you can build it or you can have them build something. And so these are not enormous, huge 20,000 line programs. This is the whole thing because OpenSCAD is pretty efficient and fairly compact. And with that in mind, Rich is now going to share his screen, and I'm going to narrate here, making some simple stuff in OpenSCAD so you can get an idea of the capability and see if you want to try it yourself. All right, so this is what OpenSCAD looks like when you open it. And so it basically thinks about things in terms of solid objects. So for instance, we can start with what OpenSCAD calls a cube, which can be a rectangle. So if he types in cube and a few numbers in it, he's just made himself a cube that is 10 millimeters by 20 millimeters by 30 millimeters, and poof. And you could now put that into a program that makes a 3D printable set of commands, and you'd be done. So you can make yourself absolutely trivially a cube. But that's not all that interesting. You can also make a cylinder of some height and some radius. And poof, you can start to make more complicated things. You can also add a sphere if you want to. We're getting a kind of coffee pot looking thing going on here. You can also subtract one thing from another. Which you do by saying difference. And so now we chopped the, let's see, what did we do here? We chopped the cylinder out of the cube. So you can do some interesting things like that. So maybe you want to make that sphere a little smaller so we can see what's going on for him. Alrighty. You can also move one thing relative to another fairly straightforwardly. And one of the things that's nice about this, and we in our book that we're putting out pretty soon, we make a lot of the commands in OpenSCAD. If you teach geometry, you'll observe that the commands are concepts you're teaching your students, like translating something. What does that mean? Translating it in 0 and X, 0 and Y. There's an axis down the corner there. It's a little hard to see. Maybe you can point at it, Rich, there so people can see it on YouTube. It's probably impossible to see. You can translate 0 in X, 0 in Y, and 30 in Z, which means I raised it by 30 millimeters there. And so I raised up my sphere there and did that. You can also rotate things if you want to. In degrees. So he took that whole complicated thing and rotated 45 degrees.
Just cube rotated.
Alrighty. Oh, just the cube. He rotated the cube first and then differenced the cylinder from it. You're right. Coolness. The other thing you can do is create a 2D shape and extrude it. He just commented that out so we can see what we're doing. So if you prefer, you can make something in 2D. So he made a square, not a cube. And then he's going to subtract something in 2D from that square. He's going to subtract a circle from that square. Squaring the circle, you saw it here first. All right, so he made a square with a bite out of it. And now he can take that and make it a 3D thing like that. So as you imagine, this can be a fairly powerful thing if you want to sort of make something quick and dirty or something pretty complicated. Most people use this for math and science modeling. I don't know, Rich, if you want to show your aspirational OpenSCAD model here. You can do animation in this if you want to. You'll bring up a more complex model here. Feel free to put questions either in the chat here for those of you who's live with us on Zoom, or those of you in the on YouTube. Feel free to ask some questions. So this is a model of an entire 3D printer that we were at a company called Deesmaker in 2012 and 2013. This was a Kickstarter 3D printer. It's got somewhat cloned into some later machines that you might recognize. But you can see that you can really do pretty complicated builds, and in fact builds of real things when you're trying to think about prototyping in OpenSCAD. So I don't know if you want to say anything about this model, Rich. This is not a short model.
Now this was almost 1,000 lines of code, 900 lines of code. So it took a while, but it's using the same software. It's making use of. There are some loops in here, so I don't have to program every individual feature. For instance, these 3 wheels here, there's a mathematical relationship about how they are oriented, and so there's a loop that generates those. And up at the top of the file, I have a bunch of variables that I use. So I've got I designed it to be possible to use a different type of wheel. I'm not sure if it will work. Try this. No, that's broken. Okay. I haven't,
the hazard of real-time demos, I know, but
yeah. But I could change the dimensions of that. I think that'll work.
and you notice that it's quite fast, surprisingly fast for how much stuff it's doing.
So it made the platform wider and lengthened this bar appropriately. so that it can reach all of that platform space. And if I want to make it larger in this dimension as well, that should just work.
Oh, that was exciting. So I think we get the idea.
Yeah.
All right. So what I'd like to do very quickly here is perhaps show you OpenSCAD's homepage, and if you want to explore this yourself, let me share my screen here. So if you didn't check it out first, OpenSCAD is here. It has the place you can download it. It also has really wonderful documentation, including my very, very favorite thing, which is its cheat sheet, which I guess doesn't come up in this same window, but it has a really good cheat sheet. If you've done any programming at all in C or Java or something like that, you can pick this up quite quickly. If you also are in OpenSCAD and you bring the program up, you can go to File, and it will have a whole bunch of examples. And so most people learn this by doing examples. So we have taught gifted kids this, I guess, as young as sort of 11, and especially if they've seen a little coding before, they're fine with it, and they pick it up pretty quickly, especially if they have some simple examples to start with, because it's very intuitive. You start with these primitives for solid objects, and then you take those and apply geometry to them, right? And so it works quite well. So we've been very pleased at how rapidly people learn it. It's a very different philosophy than Tinkercad. A lot of you probably use Tinkercad, which is also a great program. Tinkercad is a drag and drop CAD program that is also good for roughing some things out. It's a little harder to make accurately dimension things. One thing that's nice in this is that you can do, relatively complicated mathematical relationships fairly straightforwardly. Whoops, because you're fairly straightforwardly, your models are slippery because of the fact that you can, you're writing computer code, so you can do that with a minimum of fuss, and you can also have very complicated, repetitive things in what's pretty tight piece of code, or fairly tight form, because of the fact that it's you don't have to mess around with dragging and dropping individual pedals or something like that yourself. So do people have questions or any interest applications they'd like to ask about or anything like that? We have a couple of minutes for questions. I know that went by quickly, but so a few things to close out here, because I know we close up in a minute. So if you want to get that, you can take a look at openscad.org. If you want to see more about more of our books and other things we're doing, nonscriptum.com. Take a look at that. And we do have a 3D printing meetup. If you Google Pasadena 3D printing meetup, that's probably the easiest way to do it. I think they may have put it out there in the chat on your end, on the YouTube end. We do run a meetup where we talk about 3D printing, and so any of you are certainly welcome to come to that. The next one is April 28th at 7 p.m. Pacific time. So I'd like to thank City of STEM for inviting us to be out here. We are always honored to do presentations for them. And for all of you both here and in, excuse me, and in out there and on YouTube, we really appreciate you joining us for a little bit here, and hope you'll find this useful, and contact us if you want to hear some more.
3D printing is another go-to item activity that's showing up not just in classrooms, but also in many teen centers, makerspace, public libraries, and many informal spaces. As I said earlier, I also support computer science education. If any of you are teaching computer science courses and would like to participate in a free Strategies for Effective and Inclusive Computer Science Teaching online course, you can sign up or find out more information at the link pasted in live chat. I'll be your course facilitator for the 6-week program that you work on at your own pace with a weekly follow-up. Another way we're inviting young learners to engage in STEM is through the Innovation Challenge. So listen up, middle school teachers. The City of STEM Innovation Challenge Sustainable Solutions invites middle school students within LA County to accept the mission of developing an innovative, sustainable solution addressing a problem affecting Los Angeles. We all know that LA County faces significant problems like wildfires, air quality, and water pollution that requires bold and innovative solutions. We know bold ideas can come from inspired students, so we want to hear from them. The Grand Prize team will be awarded a day of innovation at LA County's most groundbreaking companies and the chance to meet STEM influencers making an impact. What problems can be solved? What new technology or innovation can be created to address this problem? Encourage your students to start thinking about their big idea. Student teams can form a team between 1 to 5 members from your school and start brainstorming problems to develop an innovative solution that can help address a sustainable problem facing LA. Then they film a 2-minute video that includes identifying the problem, the solution, the steps used to develop it, and the potential impact. Finally, they can parent registration and video submission. You can learn more at cityofstem.org's Innovation Challenge. Up next, I'd like to introduce Parker Anderson Enrichment, who will give you some more ideas about the use of STEM activities to better engage students in academic content.
City of STEM.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to STEM is in Session. We are from Parker Anderson Enrichment, where fun comes first. And my name is John Posacco. I'm the Director of Programming at Parker Anderson Enrichment. And I'm thrilled to be partnering with City of STEM tonight to bring you some really fun ideas for use in either your virtual or in-person STEM class, whatever that may look like in the coming weeks. With me tonight are our directors, fellow directors, as well as, really most importantly, 2 of our shining star instructors. My counterpart, Naomi Prazak, is the Director of Personnel and Staff Development, and she is going to be answering anybody's questions on the YouTube stream directly in the chat. So if anybody out there watching on YouTube has questions about the specific activities our instructors are going to be doing tonight, feel free to pop your question into the chat and Naomi will answer that as best she can. So first, I would like to introduce you to our colleague, Lisa Nadesdi. She's going to introduce herself and then pass it along to our instructors. Take it away, Lisa.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited to be here. My name is Lisa Nadesdi, and I am the owner and program director for our Central Los Angeles division and our Ventura County division as well. And so I work alongside Naomi and John to facilitate programming, and we are just really excited to be a part of this. We teach virtually, and when appropriate, we'll be able to teach classes in person as well. And right now, I'm just going to pass it along to our first presenter.
Hello, my name is Olivia Redelato, and I am a marine biology instructor, along with the many other hats that I wear. Tonight, I'll be taking all of you on a journey into the deep blue sea. Here is my colleague Max to introduce himself.
Hey everybody, I'm Max Malecki. I'm a technology instructor here at Parker Anderson, and I hope you're ready for some fun tonight because I'm going to teach you how to make your own video games. Strap in and get ready for the thrill of your life, my friends. All right, I think my colleague John can take it from here.
Okay, so while Max is getting set up, again, if anybody has questions, they can either put them in the chat on YouTube, or if you're by a computer and have an email set, you can email us at info@parker-anderson.org. And I believe that email address will show up on the screen at some point. But, you know, that's partly what we do, is we're here to help. And how can we help make your class even better and bring the virtual activities to life? So any and all questions are welcome. So as soon as we are ready here, Max is going to take us on a ride with Flappy Bird. And I don't know if any of you have played this before. I've spent hours infuriatingly on my phone trying to get past level, I think, 3, and I just couldn't do it. So I'm going to pay close attention to this and see if I can maybe master the behind the scenes of the game and give myself a little more of a confidence boost. How's that sound, Max?
Sounds good, yeah. All right, well, I am ready to go here. So, yeah, let's take it away, shall we? So if you follow the link that is on your screen right now, code.org/Flappy, easy to remember, right? You should get a screen like this with a YouTube video. Obviously, I would love to watch this, but we don't quite have time for that right now. So we're going to go ahead and click this nice big X button right here to get to the main screen of our program here. So this is code.org. It's a website made by some very smart people to make coding a video game easy and fun. A couple of things I want to point out right here. Right here is the Flappy Bird themselves. They'll be giving us some instructions. We're going to click OK to see the rest of our screen. Now there's 3 parts of the screen I want to point out to you. On the left right here is our game space. This is where we can preview the game as we work on it, try it out, make sure everything is looking good. In the middle right here is what I call the toolbox. This has all of the code blocks that we're going to use to start our game. Just like building with Legos, we're going to be stacking our code blocks together to form our video game. And then finally on the right here is our workspace. Any code block we drag into here will be a piece of code that the game will use. And the way we're going to actually build this game is we're going to use what we in the programming world call events. Events are like fancy ways of saying rules. We're going to make a couple of rules for our game, and from those rules, our game will spring forth like a fresh flower. Just like in any other sport, like basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, any sport or game you might play in real life, every game works the exact same way. For instance, if you shoot a basketball into a hoop, you always get a point, right? If we put that into code, it's the same principle. The game will follow whatever rules we give it with zombie-like obedience. So here's how we make our events. First, we want our green event block, which is right here. This tells the computer when the rule comes into effect. And then we combine that with a blue action block, which is right here. This tells the computer what happens when our rule comes into effect. So to combine these two, they've already given us our green event block right here, when click. Let's combine it with a blue action block to make Flappy flap whenever we click on the screen. So we're going to hover over it with our mouse, get this nice yellow outline right here, and then we're going to click it into place to form our first rule, when click flap. When click flap. So that should make our bird flap whenever we click on him. Let's go ahead and click the run button right here to try this out in our game. Let's click to get going. And there we go. Now every time I click, Flappy follows my instructions and flaps. Let's see if we can make this target right here. And there we go, my friends. We just made a code block and the first part of our game. We'll go ahead and click continue here when we see this screen. Now, we could go through this whole tutorial and learn every rule as we go, but we're going to have to kick it up to warp speed here for this demo. So we're going to go ahead and click on this dot here right at the end where it says 10. Click on that dot there that says 10 right at the end there in the top middle of your screen. That should take you right there. You'll see a nice big number 10 in the middle of your screen when you're there. So as you can see, we've advanced a bit, and now the goal is to create our own game, and code.org has given us all the code blocks that we will need to finish making our game. So to finish our game, we're going to want to make 3 rules for it. The first rule is the one we just made. When we click, we want Flappy to flap. The second rule we're going to make is whenever we hit the ground, we want the game to end. And the third rule we're going to make is whenever we pass an obstacle, one of those pipes, we want to get a point. So let's go ahead and make our basic rules. We're going to go ahead and go to our green event block right there, when click. And we're going to combine it with our flap block again. As you can see, it's been upgraded to flap a normal amount now. We're going to drag that over and click it into place. And now to adjust the challenge of our game, we can also select how much Flappy flaps. If we want the game to be more challenging, we can have them flap a small amount, so it'll take more flaps to stay in the air. Or if we want it to be easier, we can have them flap a large amount so that they gain more air and need less flaps. I like to have a little bit of mercy on my players, so I'm going to say flap a large amount. Of course, you can choose whatever feels right. For our next rule, we want to combine when hit the ground with a blue action block. So let's end the game by using our end game block here. So there's our second rule. When Flappy hits the ground, we want to end the game. We have a third rule right here, but we're not going to worry about this yet. We're going to go ahead and decide what happens when we pass an obstacle, which of course is score a point, that third block right there. So now I have my three rules in place. I have when click, flap a large amount, when hit the ground, end the game, and when pass an obstacle, score a point. So I have my three rules in place, but I'm not going to start the game yet because I need to add something right here to when run. So this block is very important because unlike these blocks, which need conditions to be met to come into effect, when run starts rules and starts call blocks right when I start the game. It applies them automatically. So we're going to use this block right here, set speed, to set the speed of my game. That's what's going to allow Flappy to fly through the background and start getting pipes. And again, we can select the difficulty here. Slower speed will obviously be easier. Fast speed will be a little harder. I'm going to leave it on normal for now, though. Let's try out our game by hitting run. So there we go. We'll click. And there we have it, folks. My Flappy Bird is flapping whenever I click. And I'm flying through pipes and getting a point for every pipe I make it through. But if I stop flapping, oh, game over, man. No worries, though. If you get the screen during your testing, just keep playing to keep on coding and having some fun here. So now that I have my basic rules, I can add some other fun stuff to customize my game. So let's do this rule right here. What happens when we hit an obstacle? This is another point where you can add to the challenge of your game if you want. If you want to be as close to the original game as possible, you can add an end game block right there to end the game if you hit a pipe. Or if you want to have some mercy on your players, you can scroll down here and select this block, set score to 0. This will reset your score to 0, but it won't end the game if you hit an obstacle. Finally, let's do some fun stuff to change the background and add some other fun customizations. So we can do stuff like use our set scene block right here to set the background. There's all sorts of wonderful options right here. I think I'm going to go with a sci-fi background today myself. We can use the set player block here to set the type of bird. Yes, we are not confined to being the yellow Flappy Bird. We can also be a Flappy spaceship, a Flappy bat, a Flappy unicorn. The sky is the limit. I think I want to be a Flappy shark. That sounds awesome. Finally, we can set the obstacle. So if we don't want to fly through pipes, we have other great options here. I feel like I have to do the laser, right? And then we can also set the type of ground that we have. All sorts of wonderful options. I think I'm going to go with the lava. Really make this an epic Flappy game. Finally, there is one more thing we can do to set the difficulty of our game, and that is set the gap in our pipe. A small gap will make it a little harder to fly through. A large gap will make it easier. I want there to be a little bit more challenge in my game now, so I'm going to select a small gap. And the final thing I can do is set the gravity. If you remember from science class, gravity is a force that pulls things back down to Earth when they're in the sky. So if we have low gravity, the game will be a little easier because Flappy will gently float down to the bottom like a leaf. If we have high gravity, it'll be harder because Flappy will be pulled down like a rock to the bottom of the Earth. So I am going to leave my gravity normal because I am a merciful person. And let's check out my game with all the customizations now by clicking on Run. There we go. Now I'm a flappy shark flying over lava through giant lasers. It's like flying through a heavy metal album cover, isn't it? All right. There we go. And when I'm done testing it, all I need to do is fall to the bottom and I'll get this screen. So this is really fun. This is where I can share my game around with folks. So as you can see, I have a link right here. This link is all I need to do to access my game when I'm done with it. If you're on a computer, you can click and drag it to highlight it in blue, then right-click and select copy to copy it. If you're on iPad, you can do the select function by tapping on it and highlighting it and then copying it the exact same way before. All you need to do to keep playing your game is paste this into any web browser and you'll be able to play it just like you just played it here. You can also send it to a phone by clicking here and entering in any US phone number to send the link right over there. All right, and that is Flappy Bird, my friends. I hope you enjoy this game. I hope it brings great fun to you and great frustration to anybody who want to challenge with it. Let me check in with my pal John here. If we have any questions from the live stream chat, I can answer those now.
Max, that was incredible. I don't see any questions from the YouTube stream, but as you were doing your demonstration, Max, it just occurred to me, what are the age groups that typically this kind of activity works with? What's the youngest you've been able to do this activity successfully with, and then what's kind of some of the older students you've worked with on this?
That is an amazing question, John. So our program can be offered from anybody in the K through 5 age group. I've had kids as young as kindergarten do this project, of course, in a more simplified version. And I've also had older kids do it in a more complex version that gives them a lot more challenge and meat to sink their teeth into. We have all sorts of other great activities as well in the coding and game design program. So I hope that you will check some of them out, and hopefully I'll be able to have some fun coding some amazing games with all of you.
Great. And one more question, Max. Is this the actual code that the game developers used when they created Flappy Bird, the game?
That is another great question, John. So this is not the actual code that the developers used. Rather, this is what we call block coding. So that is a coding language that was developed by engineers at MIT to make coding a lot more fun and a lot more accessible. If this were the actual code, we would see a lot of ones and zeros and letters and all kinds of stuff you would probably need a lot of school to understand. But with block coding, almost anybody can get it, and anybody can design their own awesome video game.
Great. Well, that seems accessible, Max. Thank you so much. That gives me more confidence when I get back to the game myself. Okay, so thanks, Max. And next we have Olivia Regalado, who's going to help us really understand the Deep Blue Sea a little better, virtually anyway. So Olivia, take it away.
Hello. So today I'm going to be working with you guys as if I'm going to be teaching the younger students. So there is going to be a little bit of interaction that I'm asking from the crowd. So I may not be able to see you guys, but please interact if you can. So let me set my presentation. So today's lesson, or we're going to start off, is with what is a fish? So some of the characteristics, or the most common characteristics that people seem to know about fish, are their gills. So fish, they need to breathe, but unlike mammals and other out-of-water organisms, they do not have lungs, but rather they have a set of organs called gills, and they kind of work like lungs. We'll get into that further into our lesson. Other key features to fish are having fins and tails to move around. So, and with fish, with the use of their fins and tails, they can use those items to move left, to the right, and forward, but they cannot use it to actually go up or down. That is a different organ that we'll get into. Fish also have scales, or a slimy skin covering. So I'm not sure if any of you guys have ever touched a fish. It's kind of rare. But if you were to touch them, some fish have a hard set of scales, kind of like a set of armor or chainmail. And then while others have a little bit of a slimy mucus membrane that lines their body. And essentially, rather than trying to protect it from getting bit like an armored scale, the slime almost acts as a slippery covering so that the fish can slip away if it gets attacked by a predator. Other key features to fish is that they're cold-blooded. So if we were to feel our body, obviously we still can get cold or too hot, but for the most part, being mammals, our body can regulate its own temperature, and we are considered warm-blooded. But with fish, they are cold-blooded organisms, meaning that they cannot self-regulate their body temperature. So if they're feeling a little cold, they have to go to warmer temperature areas. And if they're feeling a little bit too warm, they have to go to colder temperatured areas. So they have to regulate it out of their system. Fish are also vertebrate. So if you get your hands and try to feel towards the center of your back down, you're going to feel your spine. And that spine is considered our vertebrae, our backbone. So fish also have that vertebrae, and we'll be able to look into it in our dissection so you can see. And fish or animals that do not have a vertebrae are called invertebrates. Now, I mentioned earlier that the fish uses its fins and tails to move to the side or to each side and to go forward. But how does the fish move up and down? They're going to use an organ called a swim bladder to move up and down. The swim bladder organ changes its pressure within the actual organism, and that pressure change will bring the fish either up or down dependent on the pressure loss or gain. So, given this information, we're going to play a little bit of a game. It's called Fish or Not a Fish. And what I'm going to have you guys do is I'm going to show you guys an organism, just like this one right here, a seahorse. And you're going to look at it, see its external qualities, and feel free to ask me any questions like, does this animal have a backbone? Does this one have a swim bladder? Just because some of the items are not necessarily visible on the outer surface. And once we deduce with that information, you can I'm going to ask you guys if it's a fish or if it's not a fish. And there's going to be some oddballs or a few out there that are going to be used to trick them. So for a seahorse, is that a fish or not a fish? And once I see everyone's answers, seeing the students' reactions, I'm going to say this one is actually a fish. And it may not look like the most conventional fish, but seahorses, if you do look carefully, they do have all the qualities, such as the fins, the swim bladder, the vertebrae, the hard scales on the outside, and they are cold-blooded. Now, what about a squid? Is a squid a fish or not a fish? Most of the time, students are able to get this. So after hearing most times, and some of them are a little bit, we have a few mixed options. This one would be not a fish. The squid does not have organs such as the swim bladder, nor does it have a vertebrae, nor is it a vertebrae. It doesn't have a backbone. So it'd be considered an invertebrate. And the squid, along with other cephalopods, is going to be a set of organisms that we're going to go into our next lesson. Now, what about a whale shark? Now, we see that it has whale in its name, and whales, we know, are mammals. So, is this a fish or not a fish? And if we look a little bit closer, through some deductive reasoning, we can find out that it is a fish. And it's actually a particular type of fish, a cartilaginous fish, meaning that instead of having a bony skeleton just like we do and other bony fish, this type of fish, along with sharks and different types of stingrays and manta rays, actually have skeletons made out of cartilage. Cartilage being the soft tissue. If you wiggle your nose and wiggle your ears, that soft, flexible tissue is cartilage, and that's what their bodies are made out of. And then now we have our last one, a starfish. Now this one is meant to trick you. Now, if we look at all its features, is this a fish or not a fish? And after gathering all of the answers, we can deduce that this one is not a fish. It does not have a backbone. It's a very striking feature. That's one of the first that I tell people to look for, if it does have a backbone or no backbone. So now that we have a better idea of what a fish is, we're going to go into a particular type of fish called the bony fish. Now the bony fish is one of the oldest organisms or group of animals on Earth. And they're also called by their scientific name, osteichthyes. And here's a few examples of some bony fish. Now, as we said earlier, these types of fish are a category of fish that have bone or have a hard bone material for their skeleton, unlike a cartilage skeleton. Now, the cartilage, as we said earlier, it's a material that if you wiggle your nose or wiggle your ears, that flexible material is cartilage, and it also lines our joints, along with the joints of mammals, reptiles, and birds. Now, before bony fish came to be, or bony fish and predators came to be, there were jawless fish, such as the lamprey. And the reason why bony fish are so important when trying to study marine biology or even just the biology of animals and organisms is because that was the first development of the jaw being a really pivotal point in the relationship between predator and prey. Before that, as we can see in the lamprey right off to the side, they essentially just had to wait for food to fall into their mouth. Very difficult. I would not recommend. Really happy to be able to be born with the jaw. So now, going into the bony fish, because we're working online, we're not going to be able to actually do a dissection like this, but we're going to do a virtual dissection. And we're going to go through the different sets or the different structural sets of the bony fish. Now, the bony fish that we're going to be looking at is called a perch fish. It is a type of freshwater bony fish, so it may not come from the ocean, but it is a great fish and organism to work with when we're trying to understand other bony fish from the ocean and other marine areas. And the perch fish belongs to the family of Perchidae. Now, with doing multiple dissections, we're going to look at the external structure. And when we look at a bony fish, it has what we would call bilateral symmetrical, meaning if we were to look at it from the middle down, we can see that on one side, it is exactly the same as the other side. So the left side of this fish is the same as the right side. And when we do some cross sections over this organism, the top side, we would call that area the dorsal side, and the bottom area the ventral. The front of the fish, where the head is, eyes, gills, and nose, that is where we would call, or that is the anterior end, meaning the front end. And the back area where we have the tail fin is called the posterior end, meaning the behind part. So if we were to look, or if we were to look at our own structure, you can think of the dorsal side as being along the back or along the backbone, the anterior where the head is, posterior at the very end of the body, and the ventral the bottom side, so directly across from the dorsal. And when we look at the other external structures of the fish, they'll come into a little, or they'll be a little bit easier to understand. So now we're looking at the exterior of our perch fish. As we can see, if we look at the dorsal side, so the top side, we can find that it has two dorsal fins, the spiny dorsal fin and the soft dorsal fin. If we were to touch the perch fish, I would recommend be very careful near the spiny dorsal fin. Those spines are made out of a bony material, and they will hurt if you do poke them, and they're used that way for protection against predators. Now, the soft dorsal fin is a much softer material. You won't get poked. It's just mostly used for maneuvering around. Towards the anterior side, the front end, we have the nostril, the eye, and then the maxillary, which helps move open the jaw, or it helps move the jaw open, along with working with the operculum. Now, if we look right behind near the anterior side, we're going to have a gill opening, or a gill plate. And what that gill plate does is it protects the structure of the gills. Looking at the anterior side, we have the pectoral fin. Now the pectoral fin, almost kind of like arms if we were to compare it with our bodies, will help it move around the water side by side. Looking along looking along the bottom side of the fish, we have the pelvic fin and the anal fin, and those fins are also used by the fish to help maneuver through the water. Looking at the posterior side, we have the caudal fin. And I don't know if any of you guys have been on a boat, or if you look at the end of just a regular traditional fishing boat, they do have maneuvering pieces that do move side by side that help control where the boat is going to go. And that's kind of modeled after the fish. The caudal fin will move side by side to help the fish maneuver left or right. Now, if we were to look along the side of the fish, we're going to see this faint line called the lateral line. Now, the lateral line lines right around the spine, and along it, there's small sensory cells that can help sense movement within the water. So oftentimes, if a fish may not see behind it, it can still feel, with that lateral line sensory organ, it can still feel movement around the water, which is why it's pretty hard to sneak up on a fish. So now we're looking at the skeleton of the fish, and we can have a clear view of the backbone, making it a vertebrae. As we can see on that spiny dorsal fin, it is very sharp, and part of the reason why you do not want to touch the spiny dorsal fin, along with the other fins. And we can actually see that the fins are lined by very thin and very small skeletons. Now, if this were to be a non-bony fish, but a cartilaginous fish, such as the shark, whale shark, or manta rays, we would see that this would actually be composed of cartilage and not a bony material. Now, the bony material, it does make it more structurally strong, but the cartilage or the cartilage skeleton will allow for more maneuvering and more flexibility. So they both have their drawbacks and gains. Now, looking under the gill plate. So in this part of the dissection, we would be removing the gill plate and seeing what's inside. And when we see inside, we kind of see this feathery organ. And those feathery organs are actually the gills themselves. Now, the gills kind of work like lungs. So with human lungs, or with the lungs of mammals, they convert blood, or they take in air, use the lungs to extract oxygen from the air and put it into our bloodstream. And the gills almost work the same way. The fish or the organism will take in water, and what the gills would do is, as the water is running through the gill filaments, as we can see right here, it'll use those gill filaments to extract the oxygen out of our water and into the bloodstream. So they kind of work the same way as lungs, but just with different mediums. And looking at the internal structure of the looking at the internal structure or internal anatomy of the fish. So we could ignore some of the outside parts. We're just looking on the inside, and we're going to see that the heart is near the gills. And the reason for that being because the gills play a vital part in supplying oxygen to the rest of the circulatory system, the system where blood travels through. Being close to the heart is very vital with trying to get all the blood oxygenated. Right below that, above one of the pelvic fins, we're going to find the liver. And this long structure towards the center is actually the stomach and rest of the digestive system. The stomach itself is a little bit more bulbous, as we can see, and as you go down, we're going to find these little smaller tubular parts that are the intestines. And after it goes into the stomach, as it goes through the intestines will draw more nutrients out of the intake in food. And right above there, or right above the intestines, we have the gonads, which are used, or the gonad structures are used for reproductions. You will find them in both male and female fish. And right above the gonads, below the spine, you're going to find the swim bladder cavity. Now, the swim bladder, as we said, it's this empty cavity, and it will expand and close to change the pressure within the fish. And that change in pressure will allow the fish to move up and down within the water. Now, fish, they can move forward with their caudal fins, side by side with the other fins, but they cannot move back. So that is just a quick little wrap up that's a quick little segment of the bony fish lesson. There's a lot more within it, but just to give you guys a brief understanding of how the lessons go with the students.
Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Thanks especially to Max and Olivia for taking the time out of your busy day and teaching schedule to teach us some more about what you love. Any last words or puns for the group before we close our presentation?
I just wanted to let everybody know that Parker Anderson Enrichment, we're teaching virtual classes that are 45 minutes long. When appropriate, it's going to be in person for 60 minutes. All of our STEM classes are appropriate for K through 5, and they meet all the grade level standards. Our motto, as said, is fun comes first. We want the kids to really get a love for science and technology early, and hoping that they can use everything that we teach them at a young age so that they can explore what they love. And we thank everybody very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Awesome. I had a great time with you guys, and I hope you guys had an ocean full of fun learning with us today.
All right, there's a pun. Appreciate it.
Same here, everyone. Enjoy your Flappy Bird games. I hope you share them with your friends, or if you made them really hard, share them with your enemies.
Nice. Awesome. Thanks, City of STEM. That was really fun. Bye, everybody.
When I do a problem, I gotta do more than just solve it. Does my answer make sense? Does my answer make sense? I said when I do a problem, I gotta do more than just solve it. Does my answer make sense? Does my answer make sense? I said when I do a problem, I gotta do more than just solve it. Does my answer make sense? Does my answer make sense? Check it, I am a mathematician. When I do my work, you know I'm on a mission. I do a problem, then I check my work. Does my answer make sense? Is it reasonable? That's the question that I ask every time I do math. I never do a problem and move to the next without asking myself, does it make sense? I can explain to a partner too. When you finish your work, that's what you're supposed to do. Yep, I cannot quit. When it comes to math, I'll never be content. Yes, I am it, and I always make sure my answers make sense. When you work with numbers that are compatible, that's how you know your answer is reasonable. Said when I do a problem, I gotta do more than just solve it. Does my answer make sense? Does my answer make sense? I said when I do a problem, I gotta do more than just solve it. Does my answer make sense? Does my answer make sense? When you step in the class, don't disrespect. You can solve any problem, that's a bet. Guess and check is what you need to do when you're solving a problem and you're unsure what to do. I solve a problem and I do more than just work it out. I ask myself questions after I answer questions. Yes, I do mental computations, but I also show my work, double check in on my work. Is it reasonable? That's the question that I ask every time I do math. Is it reasonable? Take advantage of estimation in certain math situations. Yep. Does it make sense? That's what I ask myself when I'm solving it. And after I show my work, I justify. Then I get in front of the class and testify. Said when I do a problem, I gotta do more than just solve it. Does my answer make sense? Does my answer make sense? I said when I do a problem, I gotta do more than just solve it. Does my answer make sense? Does my answer make sense?
STEM education is designed for all students and not just for math and science. A true STEM experience allows students to engage in the world around them through all the academics, including history, PE, and especially the arts. What's so fun about STEM education is its application of authentic learning experiences focusing on student interest and interaction. Here in LA, the classroom is where students learn the content and have experiences. In our zoos, museums, and aquariums, these are extensions of the classrooms where students have not just the experience, but the opportunity to apply what they are or have been learning. Speaking of, the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County has a ton of great learning resources for both students and educators. When visiting their website, nhm.org, you'll find a link in the menu up top titled Learning Resources. Clicking that link will take you to a whole world of different videos and activities involving parts of their museum like the tarantulas and paleontology. They all conduct field trips for schools, both virtual and in person. Lastly, when open for in person, they also host teacher workshops. Make sure to keep an eye on their website for when the workshops start up again. Zoos, museums, and aquariums aren't the only organizations that can provide these opportunities and experiences within a partnership. Let's see how one university project has done this. Let's hear now from USC with their joint education project, Food Web Jenga. And sorry, UCLA, go Trojans!
City of STEM.
3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the gamification of predator and prey relationships. My name is Dr. DJ Cass, and I'm going to be your teacher PD host this afternoon. And so this is my official title. I work for the University of Southern California's Joint Educational Project, and I'm their Director of STEM Education Programs. And I will be hosting our teacher PD today. And so as we get started, I wanted to ask the group here. So yes, this is definitely a very engaging platform. So please be involved so that I don't end up just talking to myself and on my own. So I wanted to know and ask the group, what are some of your food, like what is a food web to you? Can you give me an example of one? And what are some of the major parts? And how do you normally teach these types of ideas to your students? I'd love to hear what each of you have to say. Does anyone want to volunteer? Ashley, Sunny, Diana, any of you want to participate with us today, or Miss Baker?
Well, I'm still driving.
That's okay.
But we've used the FOSS kits, have a set of cards that talk about it. And whenever we have diagrams, we try to use the language that whatever the animal is eaten by the other animal, because that's how it's worded on state tests. It's usually like an insect is eaten by the bird instead of saying it the other way around.
So saying that insect is eaten by a bird versus a bird eating that insect?
Yes.
Got it. Thank you, Ashley, for writing it into the chat as well. So Ashley wrote, shows the different foods that organisms eat. So that's, I'll put that in here as well. And so when you're thinking of a food web yourself, like what parts, because I mean, Ms. Baker brought up two great examples of an insect and a bird. What are other parts that might be involved in, like, let's say the food web with the insect and the bird?
Only other thing that I remember is I think the sun produces the energy for the plants, but I forget what the plants are called, the producers, or all my vocabulary is off because I can't remember everything.
Hey, no worries at all. I like it. So I think many food webs on our planet definitely start with the sun. And then from our YouTube chat, Angela says a food web is a network, which is very true. A network of connections. And I think Ms. Baker did say one crucial component of this, which was a primary producer is definitely one of them. And then Ashley put in the chat, starts with the sun energy. Yep, that's right. And ends with a top predator. Very true. You're a very knowledgeable group here. I love this. So if we start with a primary producer, which would, as Cindy said, that would be a plant. What eats a plant? Like, what are some of the vocab words of what types of creatures would eat a plant? That's right. So we have some herbivores. Oops. And I think, let's see if DJ can spell. Nope. There we go. And then, nope, still wrong. There we go. Jesus from YouTube says a source of energy that starts from the sun. So definitely having the sun is the main source of energy for a lot of food webs. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And so what are some examples of like what eats what in different habitats? So like choose whatever habitat you would like, and what is like a plant example in that habitat? What is an example of a herbivore in that habitat? What eats that herbivore? Like, how do we get, as Angela or as Ashley said, to that top predator? Can we give like a specific example that comes to mind? So there's a Angela online said that primary consumers eat primary producers. Very true. Can someone give me a specific example? Like ones that they might have taught to their students in the past. It can be any habitat. It could be a polar habitat, an ocean habitat, desert. What are some examples of these plants and herbivores that come to mind? Ooh, thank you, Ashley. So Ashley says we have a plant, and then a grasshopper, and then a frog, and then our top predator would be a snake. Oops. Very nice, very nice. And so that would probably be maybe in a desert biome, maybe, or a desert habitat. There's probably a few different ones that might have different adaptations of those types of plants and insects and secondary and tertiary consumers right there. Thank you for that example, Ashley. I appreciate you. So I put an example of an oceany one. But you're right. A lot of you have said that sun is crucial to these food webs. And in the ocean food web, you have the sun here, and we have a whole bunch of phytoplankton that get their energy through photosynthesis from the sun. We got some zooplankton here that'll eat those phytoplankton. We have fish that will eat the zooplankton, eat some bigger fish. We got some charismatic megafauna right here. We got some seals that eat those fish. And then our killer whales would be our top predator, like Ashley said. So that is another example of a food web right here. For me, I would say bacteria is also missing here, because in case any of these die, there are a whole bunch of decomposers missing from this food web too. But there was also some examples from the YouTube. So Angela says a rose as a plant, bees as pollinator, dragonfly, and then fish. And then Jesus says grass gets eaten by a bug gets eaten by a frog gets eaten by a fox. And that could be like near a lake habitat. Thank you, Jesus. And so what are some things that can change how a food web is set up? Like what could happen, let's say, to that ocean food web, or the lake habitat that Jesus was talking about, or the habitat that has the rose, the pollinator, dragonfly, and fish in it? What are some things that could affect what happens in that food web? And if it helps, we can focus on, so one of our NGSS standards is human impact on the environment. And Angela's right, all of these have been mostly not food webs, but food chains, but getting multiple food chains together will be making a food web. You're right, Angela, you're right. And so Sunny says climate change. Ooh, very true. Climate change is a really big one that can impact many aspects of food chains and webs. We have pollution. Anything?
Maybe natural disasters, like the fires that were in Australia, or the ones we had here in California.
Love it. Very true. That can definitely impact many habitats and many different biomes as well, including the ocean one. A lot of that, they get a lot of runoff dirt off of those fires that go into the ocean. Very true. Ashley also says chemicals sprayed on plants. Angela says algal blooms. Jesus also says pollution. I'm going to put pollution ×2. Ooh, some great examples. And I know that your students are also able to come up with a lot of examples that they might be able to think of as well. And then Ashley also put in a very depressing one, but very true one. So humans eliminating the habitat. So like the cutting down of trees, I'd say, and or plants in general in a habitat. Because trees have a lot of different both food chains and webs within the tree itself, whether it's providing housing, like shade, or as a food source for different creatures. So that's depressing, but very true. And so some of the list that I had in there, so you've covered quite a few, so very nice job. I put climate change, mining, so deforestation. So Ashley and I are on the same page. So human greed, also same idea. Natural causes, like Cindy said, overfishing, littering, water pollution, air pollution, soil pollution, and acid rain. Jesus on YouTube also put in like habitat loss in general. And so having these, so now that you've like kind of refreshed what food webs and food chains are, and you've looked at how something might impact these different like habitats and food chains, how can we turn that into a game? What would you all do? Ooh, David in the on YouTube also talked about the introduction of a new species. So like invasive species to different habitats could definitely change the dynamic as well. But what do you all suggest about how to turn these ideas into a game for your students? Have any of you taught it before like that as a game? So Ashley says, here, let me make sure I record this in here too. Oops. Make sure that's readable. So Ashley says, can do a matching game like march the organism to, or match, I think I meant was match. Match the organism to this habitat and then match the predator to its prey. Angela says, yes, invasive species as another example. Very nice. So what we did is we turned it into Jenga. And we created a food chain Jenga. So I'll make sure that I'm right for Angela out there on YouTube. And we turned it into Jenga. So we have, these were our primary producers. This is the ocean habitat specifically one that we did. And the one that we're gonna look at today is the deep sea science one. And so your primary producers are here on the bottom, your primary consumers, your secondary consumers, and your tertiary consumers. For this one, we actually glued the top 6 Jenga pieces together to make the one giant whale that's eating the small fish. And then where the students created a whole bunch of ways that the ocean could be impacted by like different things like the ones you all mentioned before. And then some are positive reactions to this and some are negative. And so if something good happens to this environment, you can add some of the pieces back. And if something negative happens to that environment, you pull the different parts of the environment out. And I'm going to show you that example specifically with the deep sea. But this is what ours look like. And I will be sending out to those that registered. I'll check with City of STEM of how to get them to some YouTube people. But we have here some of this particular one was the food web Jenga for the ocean. And then I have the lesson plans for the deep sea one specifically. So I know we're running a little short on time, so I might go a little bit faster. So I wanted to focus on something that a lot of people aren't super familiar with, which was the deep sea and the deep sea food web in particular. And so there's no sunlight in the deep sea. It is dark. It's really dark and black, and many of the creatures there are adapted to not hold on one second. They've adapted for the dark, the cold, and high pressure, but the primary producers in the deep sea are bacteria. And then we have these primary consumers here, which I'll elaborate in some of the slides afterwards. Our secondary consumers, we have some of these crabs right here. And then for tertiary consumers, we have like some of these fish and octopi that will eat some of these creatures. They don't go much higher in terms of like other apex predators as well. And so a lot of the bottom of this particular food chain is bacteria, and you'll find them everywhere, but especially around hydrothermal vents in the deep sea. And so we painted our Jenga pieces for bacteria black color, and then used metallic paints to draw bacteria on it. Tube worms bacteria live inside of the tube worms, and so provide them with different nutrients. And so here we painted the Jenga pieces white and drew a tube worm on it for that particular stage. Next, we had some deep sea crabs, and it's a little faint on this one, whoops. But there is a crab drawn on here. And then our tertiary consumer was an octopus for this particular habitat. And so since there's no photosynthesis down there, everything is actually run by chemosynthesis instead, where it's mostly bacteria doing it with hydrogen sulfide and hydrogen gas and methane in terms of the sources of energy that get used and get created there to make sugar and nutrients for this habitat, compared to the photosynthesis process. So it's also a nice differentiation between how things are normally done in like what we would consider our parts of the planet compared to the deep sea. So all of the pieces look like this, and I'm also presuming that you know how to play Jenga in general. And this is what the actual setup looks like when it's finished. So we painted them each of these different colors. We labeled them so that they're easy to find, and then we also drew on the top of them what each of them were. And so I'm going to I'm going to switch to my other camera, and we're actually going to play this quick game with some examples of some environmental impacts that could happen to the deep sea. But those impacts you could come up with for your students and label them as cards that go next to your Jenga examples, or you could also have the students come up with their own. You know your kids are creative. See what they think could impact the deep sea and these different parts of this food chain as well. Is that showing up? City of STEM, is that showing up for me or no?
I don't see it yet.
It is plugged in. Let me see if I can re-plug it in. Let me try it one more time. It worked earlier.
Switch your camera. That's the OBS one.
I don't know if I'm able to get that to work for some reason. Laura, any pointers here, or should I just use my webcam?
It looks like it's on OBS. Are you using OBS for that camera?
It's not showing on Zoom though, right?
Correct. Check your settings to make sure the correct camera is selected. The camera settings. Like in Zoom where it says start video, the arrow will let you select different cameras. Okay, that just changed your camera. See if you can change the other one.
I don't know if I'm super getting that to work at the moment. No, it keeps going back to that original one. It worked earlier,
It did work earlier. It was awesome.
All right, I'm gonna, at least for the people that are in the Zoom, I'm gonna use my webcam and then maybe spotlight myself. Does that work?
Yeah, that should work. But put your webcam back from OBS to the other one. All right, now we see you.
Can you spotlight
I
me?
will spotlight you.
All right, so
there you go.
Here we have our very fancy Jenga set. And so one of the potential impacts for the deep sea includes an underwater robot with a scientist that is controlling it, collecting 5 crabs for science. So going through and very carefully figuring out how to remove, 5 crabs for science. So 1, 2, it's a lot of crabs, not a lot down here. 3, 4, I'm already scared of this, and 5. All right, similarly, there's that same underwater robot also has these suction-y tools on it and collects 7 bacteria pieces. That's almost all of the crabs in the ocean. And Angela, that's a great question. Yes, we do talk about the instability of the food web afterwards. So if there's too many negative impacts on this food chain, that the food chain will crumble. And so we definitely talk about we want students to be able to come up with that themselves with this model, but yes, that is definitely something that is discussed. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, this is getting more difficult. 6. And that's gonna be an unstable 7. Let's see. Like a hydrothermal vent comes along and provides a ton of nutrients for the bacteria. So I get to put 2 pieces back. So that with those positive ones, you get to put them back and hopefully, make that stability a little bit better. So I'm gonna put them back right here. And this is where that human impact could also occur. So an oil company, drills into the ocean floor and destroys part of a deep sea habitat, remove 1 octopus, 2 crabs, 4 tube worms, and 8 bacteria. All right, so octopus was 1, 2 crabs. Ooh, I'm gonna do that one last. 4 tube worms. So 1, 2, oh, nope. 2, 3, and this one, 4. Ashley says, leave those poor crabs alone. That's my dinner. I don't know if you want deep sea crabs for dinner though. All right, we did 4 tube worms, 1 octopus, 8 bacteria. So let's see. Ooh, they're also stuck. Oh, okay, so 1, nope, 2. So I've had too many negative environmental impacts. It has crumbled. So this was one of the ways that we gamified how these predator-prey interactions, specifically in the deep sea, to make this happen. But you can do it with any habitat, and the numbers for like each of the different levels are also in the lesson plan that I'll be sharing with all of you. And but yes, that was our very visual example of what this ended up looking like. And you can add however many positive and negative ones. I would recommend testing them out with your students beforehand. Rick on YouTube says, I wonder if we can convince a brewery to turn their oversized Jenga set into one of these. I have one of our deep sea sets in my office that I haven't been to in a year and a half is the big Jenga sets. It took a lot of paint, but we did make it happen. But yes, those are also a lot of fun. It's just the little ones are easier to do with students. But that is my lesson in a nutshell. Do any of you have any other questions? Yeah, so for us, we end up, this was a great way to talk about quite a few different NGSS standards. We have some of those life science standards in terms of like what's happening with photosynthesis and habitats, and then the human impact on the planet standards as well, that kind of go through the different elementary grades. This is a great way to also visualize a lot of those as well. But are there any more questions in this group? All right, no questions on YouTube either. Thank you, Laura. Well, that's if there's nothing else, that's all I had planned for you all today. Thank you all for attending our session. If you do plan on following up with some of the credit options, send me an email so that I can send you both all of our lesson plans and some of the paperwork for that. You just have to demonstrate that you've like created these or made your own Jenga sets and then taught them with your students, whether that's in person or virtual, and then provide some feedback. So if you're hoping to do the credit, definitely send me an email so that we can follow up with each other. How many blocks do you usually use? So we use the full Jenga sets that are in there. Let me look up what the exact numbers are. I think it's like 20 of the primary producers, like 20, or no, sorry, it's in measurements of 3. So it's 21 of the primary producer block, or at the bottom of the food chain blocks. Give me 1 second. I have it written in the lesson plan. I have not memorized those numbers. It's 21 blocks for whatever you want to put as your primary producer. So in this one, it was the bacteria, but in the ocean one that I showed you earlier, it was the phytoplankton. 12 for the next block for the primary consumers. 12 blocks also for the secondary consumers, and you can decide how you want to do some of the top. In the ocean one, we had glued the top 6 together to make one giant whale block. And in this one, we had 6 blocks of the octopus ones. So it just depends on how you want to set up your particular environment. Great question, Jesus. Trying to give some amicable wait time for you all to see if there's anything else. But I really appreciate you all taking the time on your Thursday afternoon to meet be here with us and learn more about how we have gamified some of these food chain interactions to help students visualize this in a kinesthetic way.
The Earth's rocky crust is broken into plates. They're moving all the time but at a very slow rate. Convection currents from deep in the mantle push on the crust till it's hard to handle. But every now and then the plates get stuck and the pressure builds up and the pressure builds up. The pressure builds up. You have to get to the pressure so strong. Something's got to give. The plates finally slip and the energy's released. And the ground begins to shake.
City of STEM.
What a fun way combining a classic game and an important elementary science concept. Thanks USC for that presentation. LA County is home to 80 school districts. That's right, LA Unified or LAUSD is just one of 80 school districts and is only the second largest district up there with New York City Public Schools. We have schools as far north as Antelope Valley and Castaic, as far south as Torrance, and as far east as Claremont, and of course on the west, the ocean. That also doesn't include our 350 charters, plus our 150 plus private and parochial schools. If you think the county office has a big job serving all of LA, PBS SoCal could teach us a thing or two. Speaking of which, let's hear from PBS SoCal and their preparations for Earth Day on April 20th. Oh, and we plan to bring back the LA Environmental Education Fair in partnership with the LA County Arboretum and Botanical Garden, Generation Earth, Tree People, and so many more partners. Hope you'll be able to join us next spring. PBS, take it away.
Hi everyone, my name is Susie from PBS SoCal, and I am here to talk to you today about celebrating the outdoors while indoors. So this means celebrating Earth Day and Earth Month while remaining socially distant. So these are some strategies for some continued distance learning during Earth Month. And if you're back in the classroom, no worries. All of these strategies also will work for you. So to introduce myself, I'm Susie. I am the Early Learning Specialist for PBS SoCal and KCET. You can find me on Twitter at @TheClimateChick because my whole life is environmental media and environmental education, and I'm so excited to be here to talk about this. I am a kids book author. I'm actually presenting my book next week on Earth Day. It talks about plastic pollution, friendship, community activism, and environmental activism. I've got a background in environmental media. I started out in aquariums, zoos, and summer camps, and now I'm working at PBS SoCal in early learning and science content. I also am a tortoise owner. I have a very, very rude tortoise who unfortunately is not here right now, but he is very loud in all of the things that I do. So to get into what we're going to be talking about today, we are celebrating Earth Day 2021 this year. So this is almost 51 years of Earth Day. So we're going to talk about what that means for us, what it meant in history. We're going to talk about some early learning STEM standards that have to do with teaching about the environment. We've got PBS Kids Earth Day resources, neighborhood nature enrichment. We're going to talk about some virtual adventures you can do, even if you're not going to be leaving your house. And then we'll have some time for some Earth Day activities that I can show for you that you can do at home, in the classroom, on Zoom, whatever works for you. And then we'll have some time at the end. If you have any questions, let me know. And so this is a pre-recorded presentation that I'm doing, but I still want to know, how are you doing today? If you are watching on YouTube, feel free to put a letter in the chat and tell me how you are feeling. We do this with every one of our webinars to check in with our educators and say, how are we feeling today? Are you A, B, C, D, or E? If you're A, that is fantastic. I'm feeling A today, but normally I'm usually feeling B. So if you are B, if you're anywhere between C and D, thank you for tuning in. I'm glad that you're here. Thank you for taking the time to come learn about Earth Day resources, even if you're feeling like Arthur's fist. It's important for us as educators to check in with ourselves because we are constantly providing support for our students, for our families that we work with, for our administrative, but when do we take the time to check in with ourselves? So take that time, take a breath, and if you are able to add into the chat, that's awesome. If you can't, no worries. But without further ado, let's dive into the content. So we have a ton of resources at PBS SoCal and beyond to aid you in your education practice. The first thing that we have is PBS Learning Media, and PBS Learning Media is basically a platform of all of the educational resources that every PBS station creates. And there are a ton of PBS stations all across the country. So every PBS station creates a bunch of media and puts it on PBS Learning Media. So you can find videos, lesson plans, worksheets, documents, interactive media galleries, games, anything you can think of that has to do with whatever topic you're looking at. So if you're doing a lesson on Earth Day, you can just go and type in Earth Day and search based on your grade level, based on the subject matter you want to talk about, and based on the language that you speak in your classroom. Everything there is standards aligned, and it's really easy to integrate with whatever software you're using in your classroom. The next one we have is pbskids.org/learn. pbskids.org/learn is curated collections of different topics that have to do with a specific PBS Kids show. And luckily enough, there's one that has to do with all of the nature resources. So if you go on pbskids.org/learn, you can find an entire lesson plan that's just about nature, which is great. PBS for Parents is actually something I'm going to highlight a lot in this webinar. And it's basically PBS Learning Media, but not for the classroom and for families. So this has to do a lot with informal crafts that you can do at home, experiments that use household materials, birthday parties, and recipes, as well as articles and games and tips for thriving as a parent, especially during distance learning. The next one we have is at-home learning. This is PBS SoCal specific. On our website, we have a lot of blogs of how other educators are navigating distance learning and tips and tricks to being kind to yourself and your students. And you can find that right on our website at pbssocal.org. And finally, we have a service called Bright by Text Learning. So Bright by Text will actually send you PBS resources straight to your phone. So if you are mobile only or have families that are mobile only, or if you never check your email, this is a great way to get resources. It also sometimes just sends you messages of encouragement saying, hey, you're doing a great job. And that's really nice to hear after a really long day of teaching. But these are all of the things that we have. And so let's talk about Earth Day. Earth Day has not always been around because we didn't always feel the need to celebrate Earth as a holiday. But since its inception, it has become the largest secular observance in the world. So that means the largest non-religious observance in the world. It has over 1 billion participants in over 190 countries, which is wild. That's so cool that there's so many people that celebrate Earth Day. And so Earth Day has only been around for about 51 years. So it all started in 1962 when Rachel Carson, who's a very famous environmentalist, wrote a book called Silent Spring. And this was about the fact that she couldn't hear birdsong anymore after the introduction of DDT in her neighborhood. And that was when there was kind of the first major collective consciousness of the fact that humans could have an impact, whether negatively or positively, on the environment around them. And so they were noticing that there was an effect in what they were creating. Sometimes it was a river would get polluted or something was happening with the fires. But Silent Spring was really the first time that a lot of people became aware of it at the same time. And then we flash forward to 1969. There is a massive oil spill in Santa Barbara. And it affects so many people, and it affects the local marine ecosystem that everyone has had enough. They are fed up with no one regulating things and no one taking charge of the environment. So after the Santa Barbara oil spill, there started a series of teach-ins about environmental consciousness. And it was actually run by a 22-year-old who just went to a bunch of different college campuses and got people to learn about the environment. So the first thing was talking about environment education. So what's so great about being an educator is that we actually are the impetus for all of this change that has happened through Earth Day. And then in 1970, there were nationwide teach-ins and protests, and a huge number of the entire United States tuned in. And now it's an international event. So it started in America and then just blew up and is now an international observance with over 1 billion participants. So what was the impact of that first Earth Day and of Earth Day in general? So here are just some of the things that came as Earth Day became famous. So it started the Environmental Protection Agency. It created the National Environmental Education Act, the Occupational Safety Act, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, and the Fungicide, Insecticide, and Rodenticide Acts. So it brought major legislative consequences with everything that it had to do with environmental protections. So when we think about things that we want to change, it can seem so hard and it can seem like it's never going to happen. But before Earth Day, we didn't have any of these things. So what I like to see as this impact of Earth Day is that new legislation is possible and new creations that we haven't even thought of yet are possible to make our lives a better place. So when we talk about Earth Day today, 51 years later, there are 3 major themes that they are looking to cover, as well as the fact that it's going to be completely virtual. So Earth Day virtual, Earth Day live is actually taking place from April 20th to the 22nd, and they have a bunch of different panels. So if you if you Google Earth Day, you can find all of the things that they're covering. So the 3 major themes are education, connection, and climate action. So Earth Day is all about education. It started with education, and the more people know about what's going on with the planet, the more they're able to help. So education is a core facet of what they're trying to accomplish with Earth Day today. The second one is connection, of understanding that all of the ecosystems in the world are connected, and thus so are we. So we all have the ability to make change in our own local ecosystems, our own local governments, our own local municipalities, and we can move forward to create the global change that needs to happen. And the third one is climate action, because we are moving steadily into more uncertain climate eras of saying we don't know how bad this fire season is going to be. We don't know how bad the hurricane season in Florida is going to be. And we don't know what it's going to affect our food, our infrastructure, the ways that we are feeling, our public health. And so climate action is a big priority of Earth Day today. So you can go onto their website and find all of those awesome materials there. I'll be tuning in, but I'm very excited to share all of the things that PBS is doing to celebrate that. So before we get into that, we have a couple of learning standards that have to do specifically with Earth Day and with environmental education in general. And these are part of the Common Core and next generation science standards. So the first one is weather is the combination of sunlight, wind, snow or rain, and temperature in a particular region at a particular time. People measure those conditions to describe and record the weather and to notice patterns over time. So when you're teaching about climate and weather, this is a great standard to say there is a difference between like the weather that we see outside right now and the overarching climate. And so when we talk about climate change, it's not just the weather's cold out today or the weather's hot out today. It's modeling these overarching systems of patterns that create a climate and help us be able to predict what's coming next. The next one is plants and animals can change their environment. Birds build nests, beavers build dams. We have built in major cities and we are changing our environments because we are putting chemicals into the air. We're changing dirt out for concrete, but also we're planting gardens and we're bringing more native species into our world. So we can both change our environment for the good and for the better. Another kindergarten standing is living things need air, water, and resources from the land. They live in places that have the things they need. Humans use natural resources for everything that we do. So we use plants to weave our clothes, we eat plants, we eat animals, we use space to build our homes, and we burn things like oil and gas to heat our homes and drive our cars. And so creating that connection of where are the things that we need and how are we getting them, and then how are we disposing of them, ties all back to the things that we need to survive. And then finally, the last standard is things that people do to live comfortably can affect the world around them, but they can make choices that reduce their impact on the land, water, air, and living things. So talking about the things that we need to survive, and then the things that we have developed in order to have a higher standard of living, and how that is actually having an impact on the environment. But then you can turn it around and say, well, there's actually all of these different innovations that are helping us have less of an impact on the environment, like renewable energy, public transport, regenerative agriculture. These are all things that people are doing to innovate the ways that we're living on the planet so we can sustain it for the future, because the core of sustainability is just being able to sustain yourself for a longer time. So these are all kindergarten standards. So if you're looking to do something in your early learning classroom, but you don't know where to start, all of these standards have to do with kindergarten. And I'm happy to talk more about ways that you can integrate that in your classroom. So with PBS specifically, all of the TV shows that we create they're fun, they're engaging, they're entertaining, but beyond anything else, they are educational. And so each one of the shows that we have has a specific target demographic in mind. So we have shows that are appropriate for 2 to 4 year olds, 3 to 5 year olds, 4 to 8 year olds, 5 to 8 year olds. And they all have different topics that they cover. So we have social emotional learning, literacy, social studies, and STEM. And you see that we have a lot of STEM. So we have a lot of things that are related to nature. We have so many shows that have to do with learning about your local environment and protecting it for the future. So we have Nature Cat, we have Plum Landing, Splash and Bubbles, Molly of Denali, Eleanor Wonders Why, and Wildcrats. And each one of these shows dives into a little bit different of a topic of talking about what it means to live in the ocean, what kind of powers do animals have, how to live sustainably with the land, and also how to just find science inquiry in your very own neighborhood. So beyond these shows, we also have games and curriculum. So we have the Nature Changer, Alaskan Adventure, Help Our Kelp, Seed Soaring, Baby Animal Rescue, and Eleanor's Nature Adventure. So these are just online games that you can find either on pbskids.org or on the PBS Games app. But beyond each one of these games, there is curriculum that goes along with these that can take your learning even deeper. So we also have, as a part of PBS Learning Media, which I mentioned, a bunch of learning collections. So we have Nature Cat, we've got Human Impact on the Environment, Songs for Unusual Creatures, and Cyber Chase, which also talks a lot about the environment. And that's for a little bit older audience. So we also have a blog as a part of our at-home learning series that talks about celebrating Earth Day at home. And I'm actually going to go ahead and share my screen to show you what that's going to look like. So right here on our screen, we have Celebrate Earth Day at Home, and it's broken down into things that you can watch. So these are videos of Earth Day songs, Earth Days, and holidays, things that you can read, which are articles and ways to find different ways for packaging and a history of Earth Day, things that you can make, posters, You can make crafts, writing prompts, gardening, and things that you can do. So these are activities and field trips that you can take and celebrate Earth Day's history at home. So right here, you can just go to pbssocal.org and find this, this awesome blog post right here. And I'm only saying it's awesome because I wrote it. So I'll come back to my presentation. And then we have neighborhood nature and virtual adventures. So if you're looking to do something in your own neighborhood, there is a nature cat scavenger hunt that you can go and you can check out all of the things in your own neighborhood, as well as the Los Angeles Public Library. They have a lot of citizen science stuff that you can check out right in your own backyard. Then we have virtual adventures. You can do a coral reef project, which helps NASA organize where all the coral reefs are in the world. So that's real citizen science. You can Skype a scientist to talk about different things in the earth. The Natural History Museum of LA has an online museum connection, so you can actually go through the museum and see all the exhibits. And the Nature Conservancy has actually teamed up with PBS to create virtual field trips. So if you go onto PBS Learning Media, you can actually find virtual field trips from the Natural History Museum or the Nature Conservancy, which is super cool and allows you to go places you might not normally have gone. Then we can talk about our at-home activities. So there are two activities that I'm going to highlight pretty briefly, and they can both be found on PBS for Parents. So the first one is what makes the sea rise? And this is an awesome segue into talking about how climate change affects our local environment. So it's really simple, but it's a really powerful activity. So I'm going to share my screen and I'll show you what it looks like to see what makes the sea rise. So all you have to do is put some ice in a Tupperware and then fill it up with water and draw a line where the water ends, and then allow the ice to melt and then see how the water changes. And it's an incredibly simple way to talk about how when the polar ice caps are melting, that makes the sea higher. And that means that our coastal cities are in jeopardy if we don't slow the amount of warming that's going on. So it's a really great way to gain interest, and then you can explore further and talk about climate change and climate action through a lot of different resources at PBS. And then the next one we have is you can make your very own egg carton turtles with recycled materials. So this is also a great way to talk about how habitat loss and sea level rise, sea level temperature change can affect turtles, can affect different animals, and you can actually act out different skits and act out different scenes with your turtles, because play is a great way to process emotions around scary things like this, and also to glean information about what's going on. So this is also on PBS for Parents, and you see we've got egg carton turtles right here. It has all of the materials that you need. You can cut your little egg carton, paint it green, add some cardboard or construction paper, put a little cotton ball or more construction paper on, and there you have it. You've got turtles that you can play with all over that time. So those are two activities that are really easy to just do at home, or you could do in your classroom, or you could send it home with your students to do whenever they want. But if you do this, please send us a picture. We would love to see all of the things that you're doing that has to do with PBS. So I'm going to end my presentation with a Fred Rogers quote that says, anyone who does anything to help a child in his or her or their life is a hero. So thank you for being an early learning educator that is focusing on STEM and focusing on the wonderful world we live on and how to preserve it for future generations. We have one webinar upcoming at PBS. So if you're interested as theater as social emotional development, that is on Thursday, April 29th at 4 p.m. PSD, and you can register for that on our website. But I will leave you with the hope that you will enjoy your Earth Day and that you will do something really fun with it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach me. My email is shicks@pmgsocal.org, and my Twitter is The Climate Chick. So if you have any questions about climate or environment and how to bring that into your classroom, feel free to drop me a line. I'm always happy to talk about this. But that is all for me, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your City of STEM, and have a great night. Bye, everyone.
fractions, A over B. Numerator A, denominator B. Talking fractions. B is the number of equal parts. A is the number of shaded parts. You can use any number for your A. You can use any number for your B. Except 0. Fractions, A over B. Numerator A, denominator B. Talking fractions. Let's take a circle, cut it into 8 equal parts. Each part is 1/8 of the circle. There are 8 total parts, so that's B or your denominator. The bottom is B. If we say 3 parts, then A is 3. That's 3 out of 8 parts. The fraction reads 3/8. Now let's take a square, cut it into 4 equal parts, equal shares. There are 4 total parts, so 4 is your denominator. Bottom number is your denominator. If we say 2 parts, then A is 2. A is your numerator, so your numerator is 2. 2 shaded out of 4 total parts, so the fraction is 2/4. 2 out of 4. Denominator are your total parts, and the numerator are the shaded parts. We talking fractions, A over B. Numerator A, denominator B. Talking fractions. B is the number of equal parts. A is the number of shaded parts. You can use any number for your A. You can use any number for your B. Except 0. Fractions, A over B. Numerator A, denominator B. Talking fractions. If you have a cake and you cut it into 6 equal parts, each piece is 1/6 of the cake. If you have a pie and you cut it into 5 equal parts, each piece is 1/5 of the pie. If you have a pizza cut into 4 equal parts, each slice is 1/4 of the pizza. If you have a square cut in B equal parts, each part is 1 over B parts of the square. Take the fraction 5/6 and the circle makes 6 equal parts and shade 5 parts. Take the fraction 9/10 and the square make 10 equal parts and shade 9 parts. Remember, your denominator is a total equal parts that the whole is broken into, and your numerator is the part that you have from the whole. That's what you shade. Time to get into fractions, A over B. Numerator A, denominator B. Talking fractions. B is the number of equal parts. A is the number of shaded parts. You can use any number for your A. You can use any number for your B. Except 0. Fractions, A over B. Numerator A, denominator B. Talking fractions.
City of STEM.
If you're stuck or in need of birthday activities, you can always rely on PBS SoCal programming and activities for the younger ones in our lives. Which begs the question, how do we engage our middle and high schoolers? I've been working for a number of years providing competitions and opportunities to really engage in STEM thinking, habits of mind, and habits of action through our many collaborative efforts with the Science Fair, Science Olympiad, Girls in STEM, the Environmental Education Fair, and Math Field Day. The great trend we're seeing is a rise in growing interest in the digital realm. Let's hear from the Cara Group and learn more about esports and career technical education.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to an exciting City of STEM panel. Today, we're going to be talking about esports and how it relates to schools, specifically high schools. I know there's a lot of questions out there about how esports can not only help with workforce development, but engage the students in a way like other sports and other programs can't. Many of you might know that City of STEM this year, for the first time, has put together an esports tournament. And we're very excited to have Downey Unified School District as the presenting sponsor of that. With me is John Harris, the Director of Career and College Readiness at Downey Unified School District. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
We'll be talking to John a little bit about how this tournament, how esports has worked so well at his district. But more importantly, we want to talk about how City of STEM is sponsoring this tournament and why they're sponsoring it. So let's take a look at the overview right now.
Coming back in for some ghost tap. 3 kills, and he wants a little bit more.
So as you can see from that overview, esports can be very exciting. And one of the reasons why City of STEM decided to bring esports into the program was the connection between esports and STEM. There's a lot of confusion on why esports is a connection to STEM. An interesting statistic is that high school students that identify themselves as gamers are 3 times more likely to pursue a field in college around the STEM fields. And so that stat is very alarming, but in an exciting way. Because what that shows is that there is obviously a connection to having the students' interest in programming, game design, coding, but more importantly, the tech fields, the science fields. And esports is a great way to explore those areas because how gaming just in general really does create a curiosity among the students, creates teamwork among the players. And we've seen that in action. And that's why we're very excited to have John with us. So John, I want to obviously thank you for your time to be here. But can you tell us a little bit about, from your perspective and in your role at the district, how is esports connected to the school and the curriculum and what you're trying to do with your students?
Well, thank you for including me and inviting me to this broadcast. I'm very happy to be here and very, very excited about esports and what it's done in the Downey Unified School District. There's a number of places that sort of showed interest in developing esports tournaments and championships in different places around the country. It started kind of at the collegiate level. But as we took a look at it, we saw a unique opportunity in really pairing it with a career exploration and workforce development initiative so that students that were attracted to esports and attracted to the tournament and the championship and all of the aspects and exciting features of gameplay could also be exposed and having increased awareness with regard to what is happening in the workforce and what possible careers students might be able to pursue related to this particular interest that they have in esports. Again, as you've stated, students that see themselves as gamers oftentimes are very aligned to STEM-related fields, especially computer science, program development, but they don't necessarily know that, or they don't have an awareness level to know that that's something that they could pursue that really matches the interests that they have.
No, that's great. And I believe you're on your 3rd year of having an esports tournament at your high school level?
I believe we just finished our 3rd year of implementation. We started the program 3 years ago with the assistance and very valuable assistance from Carrot in putting that tournament together, and then eventually a championship match between the 2 comprehensive high schools in our district that already have a very, very healthy rivalry between the 2. But this really drew in a lot of students that didn't necessarily find themselves on the athletic field and participating in that rivalry in that way, but they found themselves participating in the very healthy Downey-Warren rivalry in the esports arena.
So with 3 years kind of under your belt, you kind of get a sense of how the tournament and championship have worked with the 2 high schools. I believe also you have your continuation school involved. Has there been any themes that you've noticed? What's the impact been at your district and the school specifically?
I think there's probably quite a bit of different areas of impact. The area that I really focused on early on and continued to pay close attention to, and that is the student impact. And we have found fairly consistently year after year that students are attracted to esports to participate, primarily because they've been consumers of esports themselves. Or of video games of themselves. So they're attracted to the competition. And early on in their conversations with each other and with the adults that are involved, there's a lot of talk that surround gameplay and strategy and the game itself. But after 6 weeks of the tournament, much of that conversation has shifted and changed as a result of the workforce development sessions that they've been in, to talking about their future plans, their future career plans, and the possibilities and opportunities that exist in the esports industry. So that shift is really important because it means that we have been able to influence and guide some of the thinking in terms of career exploration and workforce development in these students that were initially attracted as consumers of esports or consumers of video games, to starting to think about what their role would be and what it would look like if they weren't consumers, but they were developers participating in related fields to the esports industry.
It's a great point. A lot of students don't realize that all the different fields that are available to them, and esports is a great way to not only give them exposure, but have those more in-depth conversations with their faculty about pursuits. And I know that you've also, kind of created a CT pathway around esports because of the student engagement and the demand that students actually want more out of these programs. Now, obviously, thinking 3 years ago, when you were bringing this to the district, because the district was not thinking about esports, and you thought we can bring esports to the district and to those points that you just talked about, how this can transform the district and also student engagement in a much more STEM-driven way. I gotta think that because esports was so new, you probably were faced with some resistance. Can you describe whether or not you did have resistance? What was that? How did you win them over? Because I'm sure a lot of the viewers of this video are also thinking, we'd love to bring esports to our district, but I know I'll have a hard time selling that. What was your experience like?
Well, I would love to take credit for the idea of having an esports program. And while I think a lot of it ended up being shaped by myself and our department, the initial idea really came from our superintendent, who contacted me and the College and Career Readiness Department and said, hey, the universities are running these esports tournaments. This looks like something that would be really good for our kids. Can you research this and look at it? So I have to give full credit to our superintendent, Dr. John Garcia, in coming up with the idea in pursuing it. And I think that went a long way in terms of supporting or addressing any hesitancy. That having been said, there were parents and there were board members, frankly, that had questions about, you're encouraging kids to play video games? That's going to take them away from their studies, or they're not going to be as focused on the academic features of all of this. And I think pretty consistently we have seen that, and I use this analogy, and a lot of moms will get this, but the workforce development and career exploration piece is really the spinach that you're mixing into the lasagna that's good for the kids. And what happens is that with that consumption of good things within this context of esports, students then start to enjoy the benefits of it. And I think as time went on, we went through the tournament, students started talking about their careers. We collected a lot of student level data with regard to what they were talking about, what their interests were, and how that shifted. That won people over. I know, Alan, you had a number of parents that came up to you, as did I, that said, I was really kind of hesitant at the beginning of this in terms of having my student play video games, but the connections that they have made with other team members, the improved communication skills, the planning, the teamwork, all of these pieces. And now they're talking about a new interest in school. I had one parent tell me their student had never been interested in anything at school until esports. And now esports somehow has been contagious to the other subjects that the student is studying. as well. So it really created a connection point to the school program for students. There have been others too. Adults see changes in students when they say, well, the student generally misbehaves when they're having a really bad day and they take it out on us. But this student's not misbehaving now because he knows he has a championship or he has a tournament game coming up and he doesn't want to put that in jeopardy. In many ways, what we're seeing the benefits of athletics and students staying eligible and minding all of the things that they need to attend to be good students are encouraged through the participation in athletics. We're seeing the same kind of benefits coming out of participation in the esports tournament and championships.
Well, I can imagine everything you just talked about, because that's also a tremendous impact to the district. That is also turning those naysayers in the beginning into real champions of the program and understanding ultimately what the program is trying to do with the students. Just so we can get some clarity for the viewers, when you say tournament, the tournament, from what I understand, it's a 2 to 3 week team registration period, and then a 5-week tournament where the teams are playing weekly for 5 weeks. And then there's a championship where the two best teams of the tournament are competing, either live or virtual. I know during the pandemic, everything was virtual, where the students played at home on district equipment, and then the championship itself was also virtual. Hopefully in the fall, great. And hopefully in the fall, everything will be back where the students will be able to enjoy that camaraderie, the teamwork, collaboration, once again back in the computer room. So now, because today is all about having educators listen in and understand how they can bring this idea of esports to their district, what would be some ways? I know you talked about Dr. John Garcia coming to you. How would you say educators and administrators can get started bringing esports to their school or district?
I think it's really important to probably start at a club level, and that is at your high schools. If there's a student organization kind of centered around a student interest, and that's what we found in our district, that we went to those club advisors initially to say, hey, what do you think about an esports tournament where we had a registration and you formed somewhere between 6 and 10 teams at your site, and then they participated in some kind of elimination competition where you could identify the most competitive performing team that would then be matched up to the most competitive performing team of the crosstown rival, and then we have a championship between the two. And that was the original idea and kind of the structure. And then, of course, Carrot brought to the table the high production value of both the tournament and the championship itself in terms of the viewing audience and its broadcasts on Twitch and so forth. One of the early considerations, though, is in capitalizing on that crosstown rivalry, you have 2 comprehensives, but we also have a continuation high school with students at that site that were originally students at one of the 2 comprehensive high schools that really wanted to be included. And so I would say another aspect, in addition to looking at your clubs and the organization there in terms of generating interest and organization, that you also look beyond that to other students that are within your district that would want to participate and formulate some kind of strategy in order for them to be included as well. And that's what we did with our continuation high school. Students from that high school joined one of the 2 teams that of the comprehensive high school that they originally attended.
That's great. Well, John, again, thank you for that insight. I know we could go on and on and on, but the powers that be have cut our time short. But John, if it's okay, would you be open to giving your email address out I know there's nowhere to write it on a chat. Can you just say that?
It's real simple. My name is John Harris, so it's J for John Harris, common spelling, Harris, and I'm at DUSD.net, Downey Unified School District.net, by email. One other addition I want to say is that it's really important if school districts are thinking about this, that they really stay focused on the educational goals. You can always run an esports program just for the sake of having fun and connecting kids together in a social thing. But what made our program very different was that we had educational goals with regard to career exploration and workforce development, and that made all the difference. It also opened up a number of funding sources that otherwise would not have been available in supporting this program.
Funding sources, John, that's a big word, because that's where a lot of school districts kind of think about the limitations of how they can bring a program like this to their site or district, is where they're going to get the money. And you said the more that they can attach it to workforce development, CTE, then grants can start opening up and exploring those options. Now, obviously, we talked about bringing esports and why esports is important to come bring to your site or your district. But City of STEM, generously sponsored by Downey Unified School District, is sponsoring a esports tournament. It's using the game Valorant. It's going to be starting in 2 weeks. Team registration is still open. It's open until this Monday, the 21st. So it's open to all high school students in LA County. So if you are coming from a high school site listening to this video, please get the word out to any students you think might be interested in signing up. And again, team registration ends on Monday. I believe that is the 19th. That's right. So Monday, the 19th is when, at 6 o'clock, is when team registration ends. And then that following weekend is the tournament. So again, John Harris, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm out. No problem. I'm Alan Zach. We look forward to hopefully seeing you soon. And again, any questions on esports, please reach out to John Harris. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
City of STEM.
Thank you to the CARE Group and many other organizations who've been providing esports in a variety of ways, so check them out. And if your students love computers, then have them check out our slate of programs at EngagingGirlsInSTEM.com. And yes, boys are welcome to join in. We have lots of free teacher workshops as well. This concludes the City of STEM STEM Educator Day. Feel free to connect with me through email at kwan_anthony@laco.edu or follow me on Facebook and Twitter. All of those social media handles will be added to the YouTube live chat. We appreciate and want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you were able to learn something new to add to your teaching repertoire and setting, either virtual or in person. I'd like to thank reDiscover Center, Cardboard Superheroes, Non-Scriptum LLC, Parker Anderson Enrichment, the USC Joint Educational Project, PBS SoCal, CARE Group, and the Downey Unified School District for putting together some really interesting programs for all of you watching out there. I would also like to send a huge thank you to our production crew behind the scenes, Monica Jackson, Diana Canellis, Laura Brim, especially for troubleshooting the USC camera issues, and Rick O'Connor. They've worked tireless hours to get the stream up and running, coordinating with the presenters, and creating on-screen graphics. They've also worked on all the other City of STEM virtual events, both previously and the two coming up later this month. Speaking of, don't forget to tune in for our upcoming City of STEM events, Virtual Earth Day celebration next Thursday at 3:30, and then our Innovation in LA event on Thursday, April 29th, also at 3:30 p.m. Both events will be streamed right here on our official YouTube page, so make sure to subscribe to us to be reminded about future events. Also, check out our calendar on our website, cityofstem.org. We'll be uploading STEM events from our partners throughout the year. You should also follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at City of STEM. There are so many available resources in just LA County alone. The LA County Office of Education is also one of these resources, and I hope that we are your first point of contact as you continue to engage, develop, and facilitate STEM initiatives at your district in your schools and for your students. For more information about what's coming up for you or your students, be sure to check out my monthly newsletter, STEM Notes. For our Engaging Girls in STEM program, engaginggirlsinstem.com, and you can follow them on Instagram and Facebook at Engaging Girls in STEM. Other sites you should also consider looking into are your professional organizations, such as California Association of Science Educators, California Math Council South, as well as national professional organizations, such as National Science Teachers Association, National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, Computer Science Teachers Association. And don't forget all of our upcoming conferences in the fall. CASE Conference, California Association of Science Educators, October 8th through 10, CMC South, November 4th through 6th, the forthcoming CBE STEAM Symposium, Q Conference, and so many more. Once again, thank you, and please stay safe as we return to the classrooms. Good night, everyone.